going to first start by creating our first Laravel project. So now you can go to your desktop. In here, let's create a new folder. You can call this one course. After creating that, open your preferred code editor. For me, I'm using Visual Studio, so I'll just go there. In here, we're going to open a new folder. So here, click open folder. So in here, let's open this course folder. Here in the course, we're going to now install our Laravel project. Now for that, we can open the terminal by pulling this up. Okay, now let's go to our Laravel website. In here, make sure you go to this URL, laravel.com. After that, let's click on documentation. Right now, let's click here on the first Laravel project. Click there. Here. Now, before we continue, if it's your first time creating a Laravel project, you have to make sure that you have PHP and Composer installed, including npm and Node. Right, so I'm going to use this command to create our project. We can copy this command, or you can just go ahead and type it. So here, let's go back to our code. In here, let's type Composer create project Laravel / Laravel. Here, let's say Livewire chat. Right now, let's wait for it to finish. Alrighty, now that our Laravel project is finally installed, we have to now open the folder again, this folder. So here, if you want, you can do cd livewire chat, but this command, it will force us every time we want to use the terminal, we have to do this cd livewire chat. So we don't want to do that. So for us, we're gonna go here at the top, we're gonna say open folder, so we can open it directly. This one right here. Awesome. Now our folder is open here on the left, as you can see, and all our terminal commands will be in this folder. So now we can pull up the terminal again. And here, let's run php artisan serve, so we can run our server. And our server is now available on this link, so you can just copy this link. Right now, let's go back to our browser. In here, we can paste it. Voila. Now we can see our Laravel project is successfully installed. So that's it for this video. See you in the next one. Alrighty. Now we need to install an authentication package called Laravel Breeze. So we can just go to our terminal for this. Here, let's click on the plus sign to open a new terminal. Here in our Livewire chat folder, let's run this command. Composer require Laravel / breeze -- dev. Now this is gonna install our Breeze. So let's just wait for it to finish. Alright, so now Composer has successfully installed our Breeze package. Now we have to publish our authentication files and folders. So here at the bottom, here let's type php artisan breeze install. Type this command and then click enter. Here, let me just zoom out. So it's going to ask us which stack we prefer. We want blade. So let's click 0 here. 0. And just say yes and yes. Alright, Breeze has successfully been installed. So the good part with Breeze is that's going to help us install Tailwind for us, which is good. Also Alpine.js JavaScript, because we're going to use Alpine for this course. Alright, so after that you have to go to your env. In here, if you have a password for your database, right here, in here you can just change the name to Livewire chat. Here put your database username. And if you have a password, you can put the password here. Okay, so after doing that, we're now going to close the env. Right, now let's come down here. We have to run php artisan migrate. Click enter. Okay, now it's asking to create the database for us, so we don't have to go to php-my-admin to do that. Just click yes. And voila, our tables have successfully been migrated. And now, if we go back to our website, here let's refresh. In our localhost, you see we now have this login register. And if I just go to register, you can create a new account. And for this course, I highly recommend you use this extension, Chrome Fake Filler. Like, you should install this extension in your Chrome because it's going to help us create accounts real fast. So if you have installed that, you can just close it. In here, we can just click here on the top to provide value for our input field. So after that, click register. And voila, we have now created our first user for our application. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Alright, in this video, I'm going to install Livewire, which is going to help us connect with our backend seamlessly. So to do that, we can go to the Livewire website. And here, go to this URL, laravel-livewire.com. And here we can go to the docs. Right here we can go to install Livewire. So you can just copy this composer command, go back to application, and here we can paste it. Alright, Livewire is now installed into our application. Now we can go back, and for this part, if you are using Livewire version 3, you don't have to do this part, but if you're on version 2, you can just copy the Livewire styles. Here, click Ctrl P and go to the app layouts, this one. In here, just below the scripts divide, you can paste the Livewire styles. Also, copy the Livewire scripts. You paste them just before the closing body tag. And let's also remove this header. Okay, now before we continue, you can open up the terminal. In here, we have to run one command. Let's run npm install. Okay, now this is going to install any Node modules packages. So here, our server is running. Alright, I think that's it for now. I'll see you in the next video. We're going to create our Livewire component. In this video, we're going to create our first Livewire component. So let's go back to our code, VS Code. Here, open up the new terminal. And before we do anything, let us now run this command, npm run dev, so that we can have our CSS loaded. Next, in the command line here, let's type a new command in PHP. Here, make Livewire chat.index. Alright, I already started. Okay, so this will create a new file, Livewire index, this file. Let me just add something index so we can see what's inside. Next, go to the web, the route, and in here just down below we're going to create a new route. I'm going to call this one chat. Let me create a name, chat.index. In here I'm going to call the Livewire component a full page component. So here chat, so here index. Yeah, click enter. Make sure it's class. So now put a semicolon there, go back to the browser. Here if I go to this route chat, you see that we have this index file. Now let us go ahead and start designing the chat index. So let's go back there. Let me close this, close that. Then I'm going to call the index. In here, create a class, and let me mention right now what we're going to create here. I'll add the code, the full code, complete code for this lesson in the resources or the description. So make sure to check and download if you don't want to type all this. You don't have to type all this. Just, for the sake of those who don't really who are new to Tailwind, we can just follow through the code as I type. But if you don't want to type through this, no problem. You can just copy the code and paste it in your VS Code from the resources. Right here, it's going to be a fixed height. Let's make it full. Flex background white. I'm going to add a border. We're going to say large shadow overflow hidden. Insert 0. Here large top. Let's make this 16. All right, let me just zoom this. Then large insert x true, because we don't want it to be full width on on the large screens. Medium auto large, and want to reduce the height to 90% so that we can accommodate for the top navigation. Here large, the height, you're going to use arbitrary values. So here add 90%. All right, and rounded, yeah, make sure it's like that, and rounded large. Okay, so now if you go back to the browser, you see that we have something here. I don't know if you can see, but we have something like that. And then next we're going to design the left side and the right side. So now in the left side here, we're going to design the chat list, and then on the right side we're going to have the conversation. So here let's create another div. Here with the class, relative width full. This is for the small screens, and then on the large screens, on the medium we'll make the width 320 pixels. On the large, actually on the X large, make the width 400 pixels. Here overflow Y, auto, shrink 0, height full. Yes, awesome. So right now, just to see what's going on, I can just put a border. I'll just put a border here. So now if you go back, you see that we have something on the left side here. That will be a chat list. Now let us go ahead and design our conversation will be class. Let me zoom in. Now we can start typing this. Like I said before, you don't have to type through all this. You can just copy the code. Here grid. Let's make a full width. Here border, left, height, full, relative. No, make sure it's relative here. Here, overflow Y auto. And then here we're gonna add a style. The style is gonna contain the, like we're going to contain the content. Here content contain. So here it's supposed to be contain. Yeah, contain content, not content contain. Yes, the reason for this contain content is because this is going to create this element as its own DOM structure, so that even if we have a fixed element inside here, a fixed element, it's not going to go to the body. No, it's just going to be contained in this element. That's why we're using this contain content like that. If you see here, indicates that an element are as possible independent of the rest of the document tree. Yes, in here I'll just add conversation for now. In here, let me just add one more thing. Create a class. Let's make this margin auto. Text center, justify, center, flex. Here, flex call, gap 3. And here we're gonna have this h4, font medium, text large. Click enter. Sorry, tab. Here, choose a we're gonna just write something. Choose a conversation to start chatting. Alright, now if we go back, yeah. Now so you have this centered element inside here, and I type. Yes, now choose a conversation to start chatting. So this is the structure of our chat layout. So yes, see you in the next video. We're gonna design the chat list here on this side. So thank you. Okay, for this lesson, we're going to add a component, a blade component called avatar. And because I use a special SVG for this one, I will also add the file in the resources. So just make sure you download that, and then like I've already downloaded it here, so just make sure you download it too, so we can add the context in our blade component. Okay, so now you can just go back to your project, and in here actually we don't need to create a whole full component. Let's just go to the views, components. In here, add avatar.blade.php. So make sure it's avatar here, make sure it's spelled correctly, avatar.blade.php. And then let's open the file that we just downloaded in this resource of this lesson. So I open. So right, so now it's open. As you can see, that like here there's a special SVG which I cannot retype in this course. Okay, so now let's just copy this whole file and then close it, and then let's paste it in the avatar of our actual project here. Make sure you're pasting in the correct avatar. Paste it there. Okay, so now that's it for this video. We're gonna use this avatar in our next video. So see you in the next video. To start by creating a Livewire component chat list. So in the terminal, type php artisan make Livewire chat list, and then click enter. Now this is gonna create a new file here, the chat list. Now we have to add the chat list to our index. So go back to the index component. In here, type add include chat list there. So now if we go back, then just refresh the page to show the update. As you can see, now we have the chat list there. Okay, so now let us begin to design our chat list. The chat list layout is going to be like this, and like I said before, if you don't want to type through all this, you can just download the files from the resources of this lesson. I added it in the resources. You're going to have a header and a main down here. Here, let's add a class. It's going to be px3, give it a z-index slightly higher, background white, this sticky, top 0, width full, py2. Right now, I'm gonna have a div. Let's have a border bottom for this one. Justify between, because we want it to be on the sides. Here, flex item center. Here, a pattern bottom of 2, I think. And here, I'm gonna have 2 items. Let me just call this div, another div. You just do dot flex item center, and then a gap 2. Actually, I'm just gonna have one element in here. So all right, now we're gonna type h5.font extra bold, then text 2xl. I'm gonna call this one chats. On the left side div, so it's going to be a button because it's going to be clickable. Let's just follow HTML, good HTML markup. All right, in here we're going to add an SVG. Right, so now if you go back, you see that it's not looking we have some content in here, but let us now design the body of this one first of all. In here, class, here make it flex call, transition, height, full, overflow, hidden, make it hidden in here. All right, now that's looking much better. For the SVG, we're gonna go to bootstrap icons. In here, we're gonna look for something like sort. the sort icon here, click on it, come down, copy the SVG, go back to your code, and in here let's paste it. Class, I like to have the class on the left side. I don't know why, but I can't use the class if it's too far away from the left. So in here, let's just delete this filter. Let's add a few classes of our own here. Width 7, height 7. All right, that's it. Now if we go back to our project, all right, so now we have this beautiful button here. All right, next we're going to add some filters here so that we can click for all or deleted or blocked chats, just a few, 2 or more. All right, so inside the header, after this one, type filters. Here, create a div element. In here, I'm gonna create a flex gap of 3, an item center, overflow x, scroll, padding of 2, background white, click enter. In here, we're gonna have 2 button class. Let's make this inline flex, justify center, item center, rounded full, gap x1, text extra small, font medium, px3, large, px5. We want to be responsive. We can say p1 to 1, and then large, we can make it the padding in the vertical 2.5. Or a border, the border. But in here we can just, let's type something like, or we're gonna add Alpine. Alright, it's looking good. Now let's make it clickable by adding a tab, an Alpine tab. So here at the top, let's collapse this. Here, type x data equals, in here type or. Here when we click on this one, at click, we're gonna set the type. Make sure the or is a string. In here, I'm gonna use a class, an Alpine class, equals. In here, I want to make this background blue 100. Let me just see how this will look. Here, type a single quotes or, let's see. Okay, nice. All right, so let us now add some more classes here. Let's remove the border because it was looking kind of weird here. Okay, much better like that. And then we can make the text to the darker tone. All right, I think that's it. If it is selected, it's gonna be like that. And then here, let us just copy this button, paste it down here. Here, do something like delete it. We'll see how I'm gonna do that in the future, but yeah. Here, when I click, I want to make it deleted. And then here, copy this deleted, paste it in here. If type is deleted, and then give this class to this new class. So right here, if I refresh, okay, here it has to be double quotes, double equal sign. Otherwise, we are, if it is equals to, because we're checking for a boolean. So now if we go and refresh, if I click here, you see it's now changing. And then we're gonna, do some Livewire backend when you click these buttons in the future, not now. All right, so that's it for this video. In the next video, I'm now gonna start designing our chat list item right here. So see you in the next video. All right, in this video, we're going to design our chat list right here. So we're just gonna create a simple layout for the chat list. So let's begin. So I'm gonna go back to our code. In here, let's create a class right here. This one should be overflow wide, overflow hidden. Here, grow, height, full, relative. And then same thing we did there. Style, here, contain, content. For instance, you're gonna have a chat list. You're gonna have a list element. Just create a few classes. Width full, space, y, 2. And let's create a child element there. So it's on a list. And then we can do py3. And I'm using Emmet right now, the extension that allows me to write this kind of style before I create an element. What I will do, hover, background, gray 50, rounded, let's say 2XL, arc, hover, we also want to hover in the dark background, gray, I like 700 most of the time. All right, transition, let's say colors, duration, 150, flex, gap 3. And let me just zoom in there. So I didn't do that before. And the relative, width, full, cursor, pointer, and the padding x2. Oh, wow, that was a long one. Yeah, in here, just click enter or tab, and then it should create an element like that. Yes, like I said before, you can just copy the code, but if you want to type this, then let's just, you can type with me as we type. So inside here, we're going to have 2 elements. First, on the left side, there's a picture, the avatar that we created before this one. And on the right side, we're going to have the details, like a list tile in Flutter, if you use Flutter. A list tile. Right here, let's create a tag, shrink 0. Let's create a hashtag for now. because like we don't want it to shrink when we resize the web page. That's why I put in the shrink 0 here. Let's just see how it's looking. Let's just put the avatar here, X avatar, like that. And if we go back to our page, awesome. So you see, if we hover here, let me just, yeah, if we hover, it's giving us, I don't know if you can see, but it's a background like that. Going good. Let us go ahead and create now details on the right side right here, the name, the message, the the date, and all on the corner here, and the ticks. We're gonna have to get some SVGs, some bootstrap icons. So let's go ahead and continue. And here, if it's dark, like in this video we're not gonna do dark, but just in case, it should be dark 60 here or something. All right, so on the right side, let's call this aside. Let's create a class. In here, we're just going to do, let's create a grid. A grid calls 12 width full. I mean, we don't need the width full, but here the A with the class call span. Make sure it's one call, not two. Call span 11. Border bottom, padding bottom 2. Border gray 200. or a relative position, overflow hidden, you truncate. It's going to make sure that text does not overflow. It will just create some 3 dots. Leading 5, and the width full, of course. And flex, no wrap. You don't want flex to be overflowing to the next page, I mean the next line. And the P, say 1. Create the element inside this link element. Let us now create another element. It's going to be name and date. This is going to be right here, name and then the date, so they're going to be justified between, like that. So let's go ahead and create the name here. Flex, just create dot flex, justify between, width full, item center. Create that. Inside here we're going to have an h6 dot truncate, font medium, tracking wider, text gray. Let's put a name here, John Doe. Right, since it's justified between, we need another element on the right side. So here let's just get this small, text gray. Let's say it's 700. Let's create 5D. Now if we go back, you see that we have the name. We have the name and the date. So down here we're gonna have a few more texts. Let's go ahead and continue. Message body, div element, flex, gap x, 2, item center. Now right here we're going to have 2 span elements. So one is going to be for the double tick, to show if message is read or not, and the other one is going to be for a single tick right here. So now we're going to get these elements from the Bootstrap. Let's go to Bootstrap icons. So go to the web page, open Bootstrap icons, and then in here let's search for, I think check should be the, yes, we're going to get these 2. Just make sure we get these long ones, not the short ones. So check double, check all, click here, in here paste it inside, and then go back, get the check 1, check 2 for single tick, so we can paste it inside here. Now for now I'm just going to comment this one. If you don't know how to comment, just press Command K and C. On Windows I think it must be Control K and C to comment, like a block comment. And then after these ticks we're going to have a P. Make sure you use correct HTML syntax, guys. It's important. Don't use divs if you're going to put a text. So here, grow, truncate, text small, font, let's say 100. I don't know if it's going to work. Oh, and Emmet is not going to work like this. Let's say font, and here let's say 100. Here just type lorem and then click tab to create this long text like that by default. And then in here we're going to have unread count. Let's create a span element. Here span dot font bold p equals 1 pixel, then px2, text small, actually extra small, shrink 0, we don't want it to shrink, rounded, full, background blue 500, text white 5. Let's say 5 here. So now if we go back to our page, and voila, we have this beautiful syntax right here. The text is overflowing because we put truncate, and in here the unread count. Yes, so now it's working fine. Good design. Now let's, like here on the right side, we're gonna put the 3 dots. So when we click, we can have a drop down where we can have options to delete or mute the chat or more actions. So let's go ahead and create that. Now remember here on top, grid. Yeah, right here, the grid. We have this A. Now outside this link element, this A tag element, let's create another element. I'm gonna call this one, so it'll be a drop down. Yeah, let's create a div here, co-span1, because the other one was co-span11. Here 11. Now it's gonna be 1 because the parent is 12. Flex column text center and more auto. But inside here, we're actually going to use something like from the navigation. You see here when we click here on the right side. Let me zoom in. This we need this same drop down. So we're gonna copy this from our navigation from the one created with Breeze. So let's go ahead and here Control Command P. Here type navigation. The one in layouts. All right, cool. You come to settings drop down. We're gonna copy this whole element like that. Actually, let's just copy the one inside, just the blade component. Don't copy the class because it's gonna give us these classes that we don't want. Just copy this blade component. Copy that. Now let's paste it inside here, but we're going to remove these links. Let's remove this. Also remove this form. In here, the button, we don't need the name. We don't need this. Wow, so many classes. Well, we don't need these classes, so we can just remove this. Also the class. All right. Now, here we're going to, let's create some dots. But we're gonna get this. Let's go to Bootstrap icons. In here, go to the search, go to dots. These ones. Click here. Let's copy the SVG, then paste it inside here. And here in the content, we're gonna start, we're gonna create a few buttons. Let's say width full. Now make sure it's a dot in the beginning. Width full. Inside here, let's create a button. Item center gap 3, flex width full, px 4, py 2, because we want when you hover, it should give a nice spacing. Here text left, text small, leading 5. Or let me just zoom in with this one. Alright, leading 5. Here text gray 500. Hover background gray 100. Here transition or duration 150. Here is in out. Also here give focus outline none. Here focus one last element, I think. Focus background gray 100. Click tab or enter. So we created this long button with long classes. Right, inside here we're gonna have another SVG. So here span. I usually put my SVGs in the span. Here we can say something like view profile. Since it's a flex and item center, so it's gonna center our items vertically. In here we can just go to Bootstrap icons. Let's search for user. Yes, we can get this, the one which is filled. Copy that. Come here, paste it. Alright, now if we go back to our page, you see that. Voila, we have something good like that. If we click, it's being a drop down with the classes that we just created. Let me just zoom in. Like that. If we click here, it's bringing a drop down. Let's just make this button bigger. Let's get also one element inside here. So let's go back. In here we can make, in the class, this class width 8, height 8, and then text gray 700. Yes. And inside here, let me do that. Here I will say delete. Let me go to Bootstrap icons. That's just too big. Right here on top, make sure this is 7 to 7. Right, because it's too big. Right now, if we go back and refresh, you see we have something like that. So if we click, there's a drop down for view profile and delete. But let's find the right icon for delete here. So let's go. delete or trash. Let's get this one, the one which is fill. Copy the SVG, replace it inside here. Okay, so I think now we are all set, but let me just add one more here. Add a P of 2 or 1. Yeah, 4 pixels. Now if we go back and then refresh, you see that we have something beautiful like that. No, the buttons here, view profile or delete. So this is it for our chat list. We can duplicate this to make it go down like that, but we're not going to do that for now. In our next video, we're going to start designing our chat, box here on the right side. So see you in the next. Alright, in this video, we're going to create our chat main, like our main chat conversation here on the right side. So we can go back to our code. In here, I'll just open a new terminal environment. Right here, let's create a new Livewire component, PHP artisan, make Livewire. Here, do chat.chat. It's going to be like the main chat conversation layout. So there, click enter. Alright, so this one is going to have basically the same kind of layout with the index, but the only thing is that we're going to hide this chat list on the small screens because we want to show the conversations. So like just for responsiveness, let's just make sure I go back to the index. In here, we're gonna copy this whole code. Here, click Ctrl C or Command C, and then come here to the chat. Let's just delete everything and then paste it. Alright, so after pasting it in the chat, in here we're going to hide this so we can make the left side or the chat conversation available on all screens, and then here at the beginning we're going to make it hidden by default, and then on the large screens we're going to make it flex. Alright, and then right here let's make this messages, and then now let's go to our routes. Here we can press Ctrl P and go to the web routes. In here we can let's just copy this one just to make it faster. Right here we can add a parameter. We can make it like that. We can call it a query. In here we can type chat, this, make sure it's code, it's injected, and here we can just remove that one. If you got the top, make sure you call this one chat component at the top. Alright, now if we go back to our page, right here in the URL, here if I type for example 4, yes, now it's going to bring us to this page. So here if I use the page, you see that it's going to take us to our messages. So we're going to have our messages and our container in here. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, right now let's go ahead and create our chat box. Let's go back to our code. And here let's pull up the terminal. Right here let's do PHP artisan make Livewire chat.chat box. Make sure that there's a hyphen between the chat and box, or you can name it whatever you want, but for the sake of this video, make it like that, and then click enter. Now it's going to create a chat box. Now in here let's just add this chat box to show its content. Then we go back to our chat. In here we can remove all of this, and then alright, and then here we're going to add our Livewire component, the chat box. So let's actually just type that Livewire. In here we can call chat box, this one, like that. And then actually here on top, if you can see, we did include. Here it's not supposed to be include because this is just going to call the Livewire blade file and not the whole component with the backend. So let us now just, here we can remove this and then call like that, Livewire chat list, this. Just click there, voila. Now if we go back and refresh, you see it's working. But because let's also just fix the one in the chat index here. We can just copy this one from the chat so that we can put it in the chat index right here. In here, just remove this include so we can also add the full Livewire component. Alrighty. Now I think, yeah, for now let us just let me make this video short. In the next video, I'm going to design our chat header file here, and I'm going to design the body and the footer. So see you in the next video. Design. So here, let's type the header. Here, let's add type width full, sticky, insert x0. Let's make it a flex. Here, padding bottom. Just zoom in. In here, the padding top, let me put on 5 pixels too. Top 0, Z 10, background white. Background is white. Border bottom. Alright, that's it for this class. Here, border bottom. Inside, you're going to create another div element. Here, dot flex width full, item center px2, the large px4. That's to cause a responsive there, and then the gap 2, here medium gap 5. Click tab. Alright, now in here we're going to have 2 elements or 3. Let's see. First, it's going to be the return button. So here it's going to be a link. Let's just add a hashtag for now. Here we can create a class for this one. Here, shrink 0, large, hidden. Alright, inside here we're gonna create we're gonna put an SVG, but for now let's just create the other element. Here it's going to be the avatar. So here div dot shrink 0. Inside, if you remember before earlier, we created an avatar in the components here, this one. So I'm gonna call it here avatar, and we can just add a few classes. Let's say height 9, width 9, large width 11, also large height 11. Right, and then here we're going to have, let's get an h6 element, a font, make it bold, and then truncate. Here we can just use fake sad name. So it just create a random fake name every time we load the page. Now let us go ahead and get the SVG for this one. It's going to be a return. So we can just go to the hero icons. Let's get the arrow. You can get this one, arrow small left. There. Let's just paste it inside here. Yes, and let's go back now to our code and try to see how it's looking like. And nice, it's looking good like that. With the avatar and name. And if I if I reduce the screen size, you see the arrow is appearing and the other element on the right has disappeared. So this is what we wanted, like a responsive design for this page is done. So next, we're now going to design our chat messages here, the layout. So see you in the next video. Okay, in this video, we're going to design our chat message body. So real quick, let's go back to our code. In here, I'll create a main element. And then the class, just make it flex co. Here gap 3, then 2.5, overflow y, can make it auto. Just zoom in. Here flex, grow, overflow. Here overscroll contain, and overflow x hidden, make a full width. Here my auto. Alright, let's not make sure it's auto here. My auto. Alright, now inside this main element, I'm gonna add a div element. So here dot. Actually, here, since we're gonna have, it's going to be conditional, we're gonna have 2. Like on the left side, the child is going to be blue. On the right side, it's going to have a different color. So let us add blade classes. So how I create a div. Inside here, I'm not gonna use this class. No, we're going to add the blade class. So if you don't know about blade classes, don't worry, we can learn as we type. But if you want to learn more, you can just research about them in the Laravel documentation. Here, create at class. Inside, it's going to take an array of classes. In here, the first class is going to be the default one. So here, I'll say max width, say 85%. And on the medium, max width, we can say it be a little bit, a lower value, 78%. Here, flex width, auto, gap 2, relative, and then margin top 2. Okay, so in here down, let's go down. Here we're going to have an avatar which is going to be on the left side. So here, avatar. Here, let me create an element. Here we're also going to, so for these ones we're going to have blade classes, because in the future we're going to use these blade classes to conditionally hide or show some elements based on if the message belongs to the sender or the receiver. So here add class, something we did above. Here, just do one class for now, shrink 0. I think we're going to add more classes, we'll see in the future. Here, add an avatar element. And then here down, let's add the message body. Here down, we're going to create a div element. Here, let's create again the blade conditional, the blade classes. In here, let's add a few classes. Flex, wrap. I hope you can see this guys are zoomed in. Here, text. Let's add 15 pixels. I want with the text. No, the default one is 16 or 17, but let's make it 16. Here, rounded XL. Padding 2.5. Here, the flex, here, text. Let's make it black. Here, the background. Here, hashtag F6, F8, and FB. Right, so next, I'm going to collapse this so we can go down. All right, so now let's add more classes, but they're now going to be conditional. So down here, let's create another quote. Here, let's add rounded, bottom, left. Here, let's make it none. Since right here is rounded XL, so with this one, let's make it none if it's going to like belong to the other user. Border, here border gray 200/40. Here we can just create this one called force. The other one is going to be rounded. It's going to be bottom right, none for the other user. And background blue 500/80. It's a little opacity there. And then text, make it white. Here we're gonna make this true. Alright, that's it for this class element. For this one, inside this div element, let's now create a body, the P. Here to be white space normal. You truncate text small. Here medium text base. It's gonna give a class of 16 pixels and the line height of 1.5. Right here tracking wide, make the text look a little bit readable. Wide, and then large tracking normal. All right, that I'm gonna collapse it. Inside here, let's add dummy text. Just type lorem and then type a tab, click tab. So now hopefully everything works well. If we go back, and then here there's something wrong. Oh, right here guys, don't forget to add a comma. Let's go back, and then now voila, awesome. So now it's working kind of fine, but there's clearly something wrong. So okay, here if you see on the avatar, this has to close down here. So just copy this one, remove it, and then add it below there so it can just close, because here it's like a flex. So we're gonna have two elements, this and that. Now if we go back, it should work fine. Voila, now we have this the image of the other user here and the text. So in here, let's just add one more thing down here, just below this P tag. We're going to have another element here. Let's go .ml auto flex gap 2. Here we're gonna have two elements too. One is a P. Actually, let's use blade classes. Sorry, at class text extra small. Let's just collapse this so we can add a different class. So here comma, here text gray 500. Here make it false. Here text white. And like for this false, it's just like for future reference, it's going to be like here there's a force and here there's a force. Here let's just make it true. This is gonna check if this message belongs to the currently authenticated user. It's gonna do true or false. If it does not, false. If true, true, like that. Here just add 5:25 a.m. Right after the P class, here it's gonna be a message status, but only show if the message belongs to auth. So here let's have a div element. Here we're gonna have two SVG elements. Here double ticks, here single ticks. Let's create a span with a blade class because it's gonna be conditional in the future just to make things easier. At class, let's go to text gray 500. All right, in here let's collapse this, and then now let's go to bootstrap icon so we can now get there. As you can see right now, the message is showing here on the left, but now let's go to bootstrap icon so we can get the ticks. Just type check. Here, get these long ones, not the short ones. Here, let's have a double. Let's copy the double check first. Copy that, paste it inside here. Here, actually, here, let's first copy this one, and then let's remove this one. Let's go back again. Copy this SVG. Make sure you copy the SVG, not the class. Come down here, paste it. All right. Now, if you go back and see, the ticks are showing now, but this is going to be shown on the other side of the chart. So, but for now, I'll go ahead and comment this out. So you can only have one there, this one. Okay, I don't mind about the color. The color is supposed to be like that for the other message, which is going to be a little bit lighter. All right, so I think this is it for the chat, body. In the next video, let's now work on the footer for sending messages and typing. So see you in the next video. Now let's work on the bottom part of the chat box container. Let's go back here. Just go to the main on top. You can call this one send message. Here, let's create a footer. Let's add a class shrink z10 background white insert x0. Inside here, we're going to have a div and the class. Let me just zoom in. Here, padding 2, border top. Here, we're going to have a form, of course. We need a form. Here, we can just remove the action since we're working with Livewire. We're going to use submit. In here, we can do the method post. In here, auto capitalize. Let's make it off. Here, let's add a CSRF token. Let's add a hidden input. Now this input is going to be of type hidden. We do not want to auto complete or auto fill the actual chat input element. It's inconveniencing. Here, auto complete false. Add a style display. Let's add a CSS just to make sure that it does not show display none. Right, after this one, we are going to have a div element. So a dot grid cause 12. Right, inside here, so an input element, type text, of course. But now let's just collapse this. In here we can say auto complete off and auto focus. Yes, because we want, when you open the chat on this page, we want to automatically focus this input element. This is just for preventing the autocomplete in the whole form. Now this is the actual input element. So down here, let's do placeholder. Let's say write your message here. Write your message here. Set the maximum length. Don't want people to abuse the thing. 1700. Of course, I'm gonna have to do this in the back end too, but it's much better to do it in the front end and the back end. Let's now add a class. Here, core span. Make sure it's 1s. Core span 10, because on top here we have a grid cause of 12. And then background gray 100. Border 0. Outline 0. Focus border 0. Focus ring 0. Hover ring 0. And also rounded large. Here also one last focus outline none. And that's it for this one. So now if we go back and then check, you see this is the element here. And then next, let's just add one element here, and then I'm gonna have to push this one to come down here to the bottom. So let's go back. After the input, down here, let's add another element, a button with type submit. Here, send the class for this one, class span 2. All right, after this, outside the form, let's add an error. Here, body, inside here, p, make this one message. All right, now you can see there's a send button here, but now let's work on pushing this to the bottom so that it can, look like a normal chat. Okay, in order to push this to the bottom, let's just do that. And then here, let me also just make it readable. All right, here let's add a div element right here. Add a class here, border bottom flex co overflow y scroll. Let's add a grow and height full. Here let's copy this one from here. Let's remove it and then add it below the footer right there. And then on top there, on top let's add a class. And I'm gonna make the class width full, here overflow hidden. Now this, it will allow us to push the chat, as you can see, to the bottom right here. This header is gonna be sticky at the top. It's gonna push this chat to the bottom, and the messages are gonna overflow inside here. So I think we're done for now with working on the front-end design. So in the next video, let's now go start working on some back-end. So see you in the next video. Okay, so in this video, we're going to start creating our migrations. So let's go back to our code. In here, we can just close everything. And then I'm gonna pull up the terminal down here. Open a new environment. Here, let's type PHP artisan make model. Let's make the conversation model first with the migration. All right, enter. In here, let me go to database migration conversations. Well, in this migration file, we're going to add a few fields. So add a table, unsigned big integer. Let's call this one sender ID. All right, next let's make it a foreign. Same sender ID, where references ID on which table, on the user's table. I can just copy this, do the same here. I'll call this one receiver ID. Also here, receiver ID. On the bottom here, let's also add one more field, table, for soft deletes. All right, now here I'm going to explain one thing about the migration. Sometimes your user's table might be using this type of field, the UUID. So you might want to change here to that if it's using that kind of like type. But since we're using integers, we're just going to use unsigned big integer in here. Same with this one. All right, that's it for this migration. Let's now create another migration called the messages. Create another migration here, PHP artisan make model message. Make sure it's singular, not plural. Here with the migration. All right, the messages table is, the message migration is created. Let's open the file. In here, I'm going to add a few fields too. First of all, I'm going to have a conversation ID, which is going to be a foreign ID, conversation ID constrained. Next, we're going to have sender ID and the like the receiver ID, because this is a one-to-one chat. So we're going to have the sender and the receiver. So just to make things easier, we can just go ahead. It's going to be the same kind of fields as these ones. Copy these, paste them in here. Here we're also going to have one other field, which is going to be table timestamp read at. This is going to help us to check what time the message was read. Actually, this should also become nullable. All right, now we're also going to create another timestamp. Now here, this is going to be for delete actions. It's going to help us track which messages are deleted, which conversation is deleted. So we'll look at this more in the future. You just copy this one twice. Here, let's add, since we have the sender here, sender and receiver, here we're also going to have receiver deleted at. Also here, sender deleted at. Let's add one more field here, table. Let's make it a text. Text is much bigger than the string. So here, body. So make this nullable. Close it. Okay, so I think that's it for the messages table. All right, next we are going to work on the models, and we're going to start with the conversation model. So see you in the next video. Now in here, we're going to work on our conversation model. So let's go to our file explorer here. In the app, go to models, conversation. Right, now let's add some relationships and methods. So first we're going to add protected fillable, and once more, you don't have to type all this. You can just download the file for this lesson and paste it so you can move faster. And in here, we're going to have receiver ID and sender ID. Okay, let's close that with a comma. Down, we're going to have our messages relationship. So here, type that messages. Here we're going to return this has many message model class. All right, for now, that's it. But in the future, of course, we're going to add more methods. And in the file that I'm going to add in the resources, you might see more methods and functions, but I'm going to explain those later. But for now, let's just create this relationship, and then let's now go to our message model. All right, now let's go to our message model. So in the file explorer, here, just click message. And you're going to add a protected fillable. And now let's add the protected dates, because we added some dates in here, some timestamps. So just to format them, let's come here, add protected dates. They're read at. Here, let's just copy this receiver deleted at, paste it in here, and sender deleted at, like that. All right, now let's add the relationship function. Message can belong to one conversation. Return this belongs to conversation class. Let's add one method here, is read. This is just going to help us, and here we can add a return of bool. This is just going to help us like check if the message is read or not, but in a more fluent manner. So here, return this read at is not equals to now. It's just going to return if this is not equals to now, true, or else false. All right, that's it for this model. Now let's go ahead and create some like the relationship in the user model. Open the user model. And here, just down below after the cast, here let's add a function. Let's call this conversations. Make sure it's conversations. Here it simply means that the user return this has many conversations class. The foreign key is sender ID. All right, but since that, like as you can see, there are more than two. I mean, it's more than one, sender ID and receiver, and they're both referencing ID on the users table. So we're just going to add one more statement there saying or where receiver ID is equals to this ID, like that. So now this will have the correct relationship for our conversations. All right, so I think that's it for our methods for now. We're going to add more, and you can just download the file. The file might have more methods and functions defined already. That's just to make the work easy, but I'm going to explain each and everything later when we actually use it. So all right, that's it for this video. See you in the next one. All right, guys, in this video we're going to create our users list, but first we need like a bunch of users, so we are going to use factory. So I'll just close everything and let me go there. Here, let's go to the database, factories, and user, and you can see here it's going to fill up our users table. We haven't made any modifications to the users table, so let's just leave it like that. Then let's go to the seeder, database seeder, and here let's uncomment this line, the one for users model factory 10, so we can create like 10 users. Okay, after doing that, we're going to now migrate, since we haven't yet migrated our table, our database. So I'll pull up the terminal, open the new environment here. Right here, I just type this command, let's migrate. So PHP artisan migrate fresh seed. Make sure it's double hyphen then seed. All right, click enter. All right, now this is going to refresh the whole database and then create these new tables, conversation and messages, and also seed the database with 10 users right here. All right, now that this is done, next we are going to create a Livewire component. So here on the terminal, PHP artisan make Livewire users, just users, all right, like that. And now this is going to create in here a Livewire users, and then also on like in the resources, it's going to create a users right here. All right, now we have to add this full page component to our routes. So let's go to our routes, web. In here, we can just copy this one to save up time. Right here, we can just remove that. Let's call this one users. In here, we can call the users. Make sure it's this one right here, Livewire users, and then just call it users. So now, if we go back to our front end, right here, let me just create a new account. Chrome fake filler. Let's go to our users. Okay, we're now in the users, but let's now add a few details. Right, so let me close this one. All right, now let's open our users, the Livewire component itself. In here, let's just pass a parameter to the front end. So here, type that. Here, let's call them users. Here, let's call the user model, this one, or. So that this is going to pass the users to this front end. In here, let's just create a few details. So you can just, I'll post the code in the resources. You can just type along with me. So here in the main, max width 6XL. This is going to give us a max width of 6XL. MX auto MY16. Let's remove that. Down here, let's type H5. The text center, make it a big text, font bold, and then PY3. Let's call this one users. Down here, we're gonna have a users. We're gonna have a grid which is gonna loop the users. So in here, class grid cause 2. So here should be on the medium. I just wanna make responsive design all the time. And then on the large, grid cause 3, and on the X large, read cause 4, gap 5, the padding of 2. Inside here we're gonna have, let's say, like before you create the for each loop, let's just create the element. So here div dot width full, background white, border gray 200, rounded large, padding 5, shadow, or you can just click tab. Alright, inside here we're gonna have another element, flex call, item center, padding bottom 10, click tab. Inside here we're gonna have the image element, the width can go at 24, height same 24, margin bottom let's say 3 or 2.5, and here rounded full, shadow large. I mean this image is going to be like in the middle, rounded like that. Let's click tab. The source here, we're gonna use a special source from Unsplash. So you just type with me https main for source dot unsplash.com. Here you must type the dimensions, otherwise it's gonna give you an error. Let's just get 500 by 500, comma, let's say face at the alt. So now let's see how things are looking. Yeah, now you can see we have this nice box like that with an image. The image is changing every time we refresh because it's coming from the Unsplash. But inside down here, let's add another h5 element. Here margin bottoms 1, text XL, font medium, text gray 900. Let's add more classes. I think this is done. The classes are done. And here we can add a username. Let's say John Doe. Is pan. Let's add some classes. Text small, text gray 500. Alright, that's it. This is going to be the email. Right down here, the last element, margin top a little bit higher, space x3 dot margin. Now here we can say medium, margin top 6. Now if you go, it's looking like that. The name and everything is centered, so it's good. But we need to add 2 buttons here. So it's going to be button right here and a button right here. The one on the left is just going to be for display, but the one on the right is going to be the action button. Okay, so let's go back. In here we're going to use the blade components, the buttons that come with it, just to make things easier. We're going to use the secondary buttons. Alright, so let me go back here. So here type X secondary button. Here say add friend. How do you spell friend? Okay, add friend. And then down here, let's add X primary button. Here say message. Now if we go back, you see we have this nice, yeah, that's what I wanted like that. So this is going to be our action button. When we click, we're going to create a conversation with this user. So now let's go ahead and loop in the users that we created in our factory. So this is the child element, child. So in here, let's create a for each loop. For each, here I'll say users, user. Let me just move this below the child element. Here let's now get the user, copy that. Here we can paste in the name, email, down here email. Now if you go, you see we have all these users now. If we refresh the page, we have the user Kari, Michaela, all that, but now it's giving same images. So let's try to fix that a little bit. I think we can use, okay, in here just type as key pointed to the user. We can get this key right here. Let me close that. And then in here in the image in the end, let's just type, let's just paste in the key, since the key is just a number starting from 0. If we go back, no, let's make it like that. How about now? Okay, amazing. Now you can see it's giving different pictures, so that's good. Okay, let's end the video here. In the next one, we're going to actually create, when you click here, we're going to create the user conversation and go to the user page. So see you in the next video. Okay, in this video, we're now going to create our conversation when we click on this message button. So to do that, we're going to go to our code. Here where there's button, let's add a wire click. Let's call this one message, the parameter user ID. Right, after we do that, You can copy this and go to our users, the component, the backend. Here, let's create a message method. Here, make it a public. Now in here, we have to pass our user ID. And here we can just check this ID first of all before you proceed. User ID. Okay, now if we go back, right now if I click on this message, you see we're getting the ID here at the top as 2. So it's working correctly. Now let's go ahead and create our actual conversation. All right, so in here, let's first start by creating authenticated user. Here, user ID is equals to auth ID. Down here, let's check if conversation already exists because we don't want to create duplicate conversations. So here, let's type existing. Let me just zoom in. Conversation right here. Here, let's get the conversation. Here, let me zoom out. Here, make sure it says model here on the right. All right, make sure I'm calling the correct class. Here, model, click enter, and it's going to be injected here at the top. After you do that, let's say where, here do function query, and we're going to use this authenticated user ID. So here use authenticated user ID, and this user ID we passed from our blade. So here paste it here too. And then right here, just after this bracket, put some curly brackets there. Inside here, we're going to get this query where here sender ID is equals to authenticated user ID. Here again, where, let me zoom in, that's going to be receiver ID is equals to user ID, semicolon there. So this just checks if the conversation with this condition already exists. But now let's also check on the opposite, because sometimes the sender might be the receiver. Like if someone sent a message to me, then in that case I will be the receiver. So let's also check in reverse to make sure there are no duplicates. So here you can come to this one, here type or where, here again function, here query, you're gonna use authenticated user ID and user ID. Here add some curly brackets. Inside here, basically the same thing as here, but we're just gonna change these values. So actually in here we can copy this to make it faster. Here just gonna flip this. Here write user ID, down here write authenticated user ID, and down here just add first. Alright, now after checking if conversation exists, here you're gonna have an if statement. If existing conversation, then we're just going to redirect to our conversation. So here type return redirect to route chat. We're gonna pass a parameter query is equals to this one, existing conversation ID, add a semicolon there. So if the conversation already exists, then let's just redirect to the other page. Otherwise, let's now create the conversation. So here now we're gonna do created conversation is equals to conversation model. Let's do create. There's an array in there. We can say sender ID. Here we're gonna get this one, authenticated user ID, comma receiver ID. In here, let's get the user ID. Add the semicolon there. After we do that, we're now going to redirect. Let's just copy this, return redirect. But in here, after we copy this, don't forget to change this one to created conversation ID. Alright, so that's it. That's the logic for this one. And also here, let's add some more logic when we pass our users so that we can prevent the authenticated user from being part of these users, because we don't want to create a conversation with ourselves. In here, let's just change this to here where ID is not equals to auth ID. The outside this where here in the end add a get like that. Make sure you add this so we can prevent our own user from being part of this users list. Right now here, if we refresh, right now if I click on this Virginia, I click there, you see we're being redirected to this URL, to this page with the conversation ID created, our first conversation here. Okay, so now this is working fine. You can go ahead and try to create more conversations. But now before we do that, let's go add a middleware for our route. In here, we can go to web. Right here, for these three, we can add a route middleware, auth, let's add a group, add a function. Inside here, you first add a semicolon there, and then copy these routes, add them in here. Awesome. We can go back to this one. And okay, so now it's working fine. That's it for this video. See you in the next one. Alrighty. Now for this video, what we're gonna do is that when we click, for example, on this user, we want to retrieve this ID on top so we can load our conversation. Alright, so to do that, let's go back to our code. In here, we can just close everything. Let's open our chat, this one. Inside here, I'm gonna create two public properties. The first one, public query. Second one, public selected conversation. After that, let's now create the mount method. Make it a public. Inside here, we're just gonna say this selected conversation is equals to conversation model. Make sure it's injected here at the top. We're gonna say find or fail this query. Say this query. Okay, now let's just check if we actually be able to get this conversation. So let's dd here. Right now, if I refresh this, you see that we're able to retrieve our conversation. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and actually pass this conversation selected to our blade file. Here, just comment this out. Here, open the chat. We want the blade file now. Resources. In here, we're gonna pass selected conversation is equals to the selected conversation, like that. Also, we're gonna pass this same here in here, and make sure you type this correct. Make sure they match, otherwise you might get an error. After passing it, now in here in the Livewire chat list, want to pass one more variable, the query. So here say query. Awesome. Now after doing that, let's now do two more things. Let's go to the chat list. Here, the chat list. Here, let's create a public selected conversation like that. And also here on the left, let's also go to the chat box. Here, let's also add here public selected conversation. Okay, after adding that, you can go ahead and start loading our conversations. Alright, so see you in the next video. Okay, so this is working fine. Okay, now in this video, let's load the conversation. So real quick, in here, if you go to the return view, let's add an array. In here, we're gonna return right here conversations. In here, let's just get user conversations latest, because we want the conversation with the latest message to be at the top. So be updated at. In here, let's just say get. Now let's create this user at the top here. User here is just going to be auth user. This will return the currently authenticated user model. So after passing these conversations, let's now go to our blade in the chat list. Let's just close the rest. Here I closed everything. Here, okay, let me open the chat list. Also open the chat list blade. In here, if you can see, we have the list here. So inside this list, we're gonna loop through this and then create the list item. So but first of all, we're gonna start by checking if the conversations are there. If else, if conversations, then we can now loop through the conversations. Here, let's move this one below this list. If the conversations are there, then let's now create the for each loop. So for each conversation, as conversation and inside here we're gonna have a loop. But now let's move this for each below the list again, this list item. So now if we go back to our chat list, if we refresh the page, so you have the conversation. But now you can see things are not really dynamic. Okay, so let's go back. All right, so here let's go back in here. We're more interested in the name. So here in the name, conversation, this one from the top, conversation. Here we're going to user. No, we don't have this user. So let's create a function. So just open the conversation model. Here let's create another function called get receiver. This, it will just get the other user in the conversation because we don't know who the other user is. So just to identify them, we're going to use this function. So in here, and by the way, you might already have this function in the conversation model from the resources file I gave. So you don't have to type this, just skip this part and go back to the chat list. So in here, we're going to say if this sender ID, is equals to auth ID, then return user find the user first where ID is this receiver ID. This just means that if the sender is the authenticator, which means the other user is the other user. So I get the logic here. We just want to get the other user in the conversation. All right, let's just copy this one and then paste it here. Just gonna change this one to sender ID and make sure the spellings are correct. All right, so now make sure the name here is correct. Make sure it's get receiver. Yes, I think that's correct. Here, receiver is correct. All right. So now let's just copy this one. Let's go back to our chat list. In here, we're gonna say get receiver. This is gonna get the receiver, the other user, in this conversation. Here we can say name. Right, this should work fine, I think. If we go back and refresh, excellent. Now we have the name here on top. All right, next we're going to, now we're going to change the date here. Here we can just say conversation messages. Here we're going to say last, like want the last message, not the first. So want the last. Created at. We're going to say this one, I'm going to use some carbon instance of short absolute diff for humans, like that. Right, now this might give an error because currently we don't have a message. So just add question mark here, question mark there, question mark there, just so we can avoid the error of the message. Currently it won't show anything because there's no messages. So if we go back, excellent. So now it's not showing anything, but that's okay. It means it's working fine as we want. Okay, next let's now add some images here on the left side. So here in the avatar, right here, let's add a source. In here we're gonna use the Unsplash images, the one we used before. So let's just type https splash.com. Here make 500 x 500 question mark face. All right, this should be, yeah, it's not loading the images as we can see. Excellent, but the images are the same. So let's just make them different. The same trick we used before. In here, let's add hyphen key, and then we can go here, just point it as key. All right, now if we check, awesome, nice, bringing different kinds of pictures and images, which is good. All right, here let's just change one thing. Here let's make this one the name text 900. All right, I think now it's working fine. Now, when you click on the message, you want to redirect to the other, like to the actual conversation. So here, just add a route, chat. And here, let's add the conversation ID when we click. So now if we go back right here, if right here currently it's 4, as you can see. If I click, it's going to change to 5. If I click, it's going to change to 4. So it's working fine. Excellent. Next, if the conversation matches the one on top here, this query, we're now gonna, mark this so we can just see it visually. So let's go back here on top, here in the list, the one on top. Here in the end, let's just add one more thing. Here check conversation ID is equals to the selected conversation ID. So here add a question mark, 100 over 70, or else just don't add anything. Right, so now if we go back here, if we refresh, awesome. Now as you can see, there's now a background. If we click on this one, see we have a background here which is there, so that's good. Right, next, if we have, for example, a lot of conversations in the chat, here, let's go back to the users. Here, if I add more conversations, let me just add a bunch of conversations. Just go back, do this process right now, go add many messages, create many conversations. I want them to overflow. All right, I think that's it. Okay, awesome. Now we have an overflow here because I want to test something. I want to show you something. Here, for example, we click on this conversation. It's going to show because it's like in the first three. But if a conversation is overflowed down here, we want to be able to scroll to that conversation inside this element. So I'm going to use a few JavaScript or Alpine with that. So let's do that. Right now, first of all, here we're going to let's add an ID to this one. Here the chat element, let's add attributes. Here let's call this one ID is equals to conversation. Here we can pass this one conversation ID. Let's also add another attribute here, wire key, just to avoid any DOM diffing. Here conversation ID. All right, awesome. Now what we want is that when we load this chat list, if there's a selected conversation, then we want to scroll to this element here, the ID. So let's go to the top. In here, let's add an X in it. All right, inside here, let's add a set timeout, a JavaScript. Here, set timeout. I'll just drop that. Here, let's add a pointer function. And here we can add 200 here, just so we can, after the page is loaded, because we don't want it to be quick. Here, when we load the conversation, we want to scroll down after the whole page is loaded, because if these are not loaded yet, then we cannot scroll to the element we want. So let's go back. In here, we can just add conversation element is equals to document. Right here, we're gonna do a little bit of JavaScript, so just follow me. Here, get, it's been long since I typed some JavaScript, get element by ID, the same one we added here, this one. It's gonna be dynamic, so it's going to be conversation. Here, conversation, so the hyphen, so the plus, the query that we're gonna get from the URL. Here, add a close semicolon there. And in here, now scroll to the element. Here, let's check if this element exists. Then we can now scroll to that element. Here we can say conversation element. Here, scroll into view. This is pure JavaScript. Here we can change the behavior to smooth. Behavior smooth. Now this should work fine. However, we don't have this query right now, but we did pass it here in our public variable. So let's just get this one public, here query, right? Because we passed it in our chat main. Here, let's go to our chat list. Here, let's add another Alpine variable, but here it's going to be query, going to be entangle. Actually, make sure it's at entangle the query. Right, awesome. Now, if we go back, it should work fine. Let's just refresh the page, and voila. You see, we have this convention at the bottom. Let me just click here so I can show you. I'm gonna click on this one, and boom, it's loading to the chat. So this just helps us to make the chat more dynamic and look more smoothly for good user experience. So now if we click here, it's going to the new page and going to the actual conversation. If it's at the top, it's not gonna really go anywhere because it is at the top. You see? But if it's at the bottom, show you one more time. For example, this one, Reynolds. Go to a different chat, and then it's gonna load itself to the bottom. Alright, so I think that's it for now. Let's go on to the next video where we're going to work on this right side of the chat. Alright, in this video we're going to fix something. Here when we go to our chat, you see we're going to get an error because sometimes the selected conversation might be null. So here we have to go back to our chat list in here. Here on the selected conversation here where we are comparing, just add a question mark there, and that should fix the problem. If we refresh, okay, voila, now it's working. We're now in the chat index. So now if we click on this, for example, we want to get this user and show the name or email right here at the top. So let's go back in here. We can open the chat box on the blade. In here, in the like where there's faker name, type selected conversation, get receiver. Actually, let's get the email because we want to use the email for logging in if you want to log into the other chat. So now if we go back and refresh, all right, now it's working fine. So that's it for this video. In the next one, we're now gonna start sending our messages right here at the bottom. So see you in the next video. All right, now in this video, we're going to actually send our message, the part we've been waiting for. So real quick, let's go back to our chat box. In here, let's go to the footer, this one. In the form, here we're just going to, here let's add a few attributes. Here we're going to use Alpine submit, not Livewire. I mean, Livewire and Alpine works perfectly. So let's do add, submit, prevent. Here we're going to call, we're going to create a method in the backend called send message, but we're going to use Alpine to call it. So here, wire.send message. Next, here we're going to add X data. Inside here, we're going to add the body, and we're going to make it an entangle. Those of you who don't know entangle just allows us to link properties between Alpine and Livewire. Here, let's close on the body. Okay, now if we go down here to this element, the input, here we're going to add, normally we would use the wire model, but since we want to do a little bit of validation before we submit, that's why I'm using Alpine. Here, let's just do, you can add X model, the body, this one. Okay, now here let's now do the submit button. Here let's bind it, X bind, disabled. This is going to bind, it's going to make the button disabled if the body is empty, so we can trim it. If the body is empty, then this button is going to be disabled. Before we go and check how things are working, let's go to the chat box in the backend. So open the chat box. Here, let's actually create the method. This one, send message. In here, we can just dd the body. On the top here, don't forget to create the public property body. All right, now let's go back and refresh. And now at the bottom here, let me try to add first message. When I click send, voila, we're now getting the message in the backend like that. But if I try to remove this and click enter, it's not going to work because it's disabled. Also here, if I try to click the message, it's not going to send like that. So it's working fine. Okay, so let's now go ahead and save the message to the database. In here, I'm just going to do a little bit of validation. Here, this, validate, body. Let's make the body required. And a string. After validation, now I'm going to create the message. Here, created message is equals to, because the message model, make sure it's code here at the top, create. In here we can, the conversation ID is equals to this selected conversation ID. Let's just copy that. Okay, let's add sender ID. It's going to be the currently authenticated user. So here let's just use this to auth ID. And the receiver ID, here we're going to say selected conversation. Here in the middle, let's say get receiver ID. It's going to get the other user model. Here at the bottom body, we can say this body. Here at the semicolon. After creating the message, we're now going to this reset body. Then down here, dd, check the message, see if it's actually created. So now if we go back, let's refresh. If I send a message saying hello, you see the message is actually created right here. So this is actually perfect. All right, now we can just do one more thing. Go back to the chat box. Here in the chat box, right here, after the entangle, we can say defer, because we don't want to update every time we click like that. Right now, if I say hello again, perfect, message is saved and sent to the database. All right, so that's it for this video. All right, in this video, we're now going to load the messages to our blade. So let's go back to our, in the chat box in the backend. Here we can just comment this out and that out. I'm gonna create another, let's create another public variable. Let's call this one loaded messages. Let's create another method here, load messages. In here we're going to say this loaded messages is equals to message where conversation ID is equals to this selected conversation ID. Just close with a get in the end. So now let's create a mount. So here just above the render, in here we can just say this load messages. I'm gonna call this function when we first load this chat box. All right, now we can copy the loaded messages, this one, go to our chat box, scroll to the, we can just close that, close the header. We're interested in here. Inside the body, we have got this element, this whole element in here, this whole message element. So in here, we're now going to check if loaded messages right here. Let's move this if down here, just above this closing main tag. And then we're going to do if the messages exist, then let's do for each. Here, loaded messages as message. Then move this for each again, just above the end if. So now, if we go back and then refresh, you see that we're now getting the actual messages right here, which is good. Next, let's now show the message. So in here, copy this. Here inside this p tag where we're showing the body, just delete everything inside. Here, let's add message body. Now if we refresh, you see now we are now getting the message that we are sending, which is good. Right, next, let's now push the message to the right, to the right side if it belongs to us, and to the left if it belongs to the other user. So right here, create a comma, here create a new class, margin left, auto. Now check message sender ID if it belongs to the currently authenticated user is equals to auth ID. Here you can see it's now going to push the message, which is good. Right, next we're going to copy this same thing. We're going to paste it in here where there's force. Actually, let's create an open bracket, paste that in here, and paste that in there. But here we're going to add an exclamation mark to show it's, the opposite, force. So now it's showing the right kind of curves. Okay, next we're now going to do the same for here, inside here. We're going to do force and true, same thing. All right, that's good. Okay, so that's it for now. In the next video, we're now going to work on this check status. So let's work on that in the next video. In this video, I'm going to work on this ticks to check if the message has been read or not. All right, so real quick, let's go back to our, in here, as you can see, we are only going to show this if the message belongs to the user. Let's do if we're going to copy this same logic there. If message belongs to the user, then we're going to show this red status. Right, after copying this to the bottom, in here we're going to change this to text 200. Now if you go, it's going to change the color, and then inside here we're going to check if else. Let's create an if else, and then here we're going to check if the message is read or not. If message is read, remember we created this in our message model, is read. If it is read, and I'm going to copy this, double check. If not, let's just uncomment this. Then we're gonna and then copy it, cut it, this single ticks, right? And then just change this to 202. Right now, if we go and check, it should work fine. Okay, you can see now it's working fine here. There's single ticks on the right, which means the message is not read. Alrighty. In this video, we are going to work on our time right here to show the correct time message. So let's go back to our code. In here, go back to where it says 5:25 a.m. Right here, we have to let's get the message created at. In here, we can do format. Here, let's just get the G. The G is just a representation of the 12-hour time shift, like that. And the I is the minutes, and then we can do the A. It will give us AM and PM. So this will just represent the time for our message. All right, now let me just go to a completely new chat so you can see, because let me open a chat which has no messages. All right, so I just opened the chat with no messages. So now when I send the message, hello, you see in here it's saying 11 a.m. I mean, this is the correct time, but it's not the correct time zone. If you can see here, it's 11, but in my time, it's 2 p.m. or 14:07. So when I fix that, so we can show the correct time. So let's go to our code. In here, we're going to open the app, the config. Then right here, we're going to change this time, like go to where there's time zone. You have to put your time zone, like where you reside. As for me, it's Asia, Istanbul. In Istanbul. So this is my time zone. And then after you do that, now pull up the terminal. Here we have to do PHP artisan optimize clear. All right. Now this is just going to clear our config. Now you can close that and close the app config. Now if we go and refresh, you see this will still show the 11 a.m. for a different time zone. But if I send a new message now, you see now it's showing the correct time, which is 2 p.m. or 2:09 p.m., which is my current time. Just fix that, and remember in the time zone, like search for your correct time zone in your location so you can get the correct time zone. All right, so let's go into the next video now where we're going to start, loading or pushing the chat to the bottom when we send a new message. In this video, let's now work on pushing the conversation to the bottom when a new message is loaded and when the chat is first loaded. So here, if you can see, we have just two messages in this chat. If you have a new chat, you can just send new messages. You see the messages are appearing correctly, but if we overflow, for example here, and then I send a new message, you see that it's not showing up. I mean, it's showing it is there, but the chat is not scrolling to the bottom. So let's work on that. Let's go back to our code. Right here in the body, let's add an ID here. Call this one conversation. This is the main conversation. Here at the top, we're going to add some Alpine X data. Inside here, I'm going to add the height. The height, I'm going to use it for a lot of things, but for now, this is just the purpose. Here, let's add conversation element. Here, say document dot get element by ID. Here, we're going to do the conversation. All right, that's it. Next, let's add an X in it. The initialization function when the whole document is loaded for Alpine. Inside here, let's update the height to this conversation element scroll height. Then next, we're going to use the Alpine next tick. So here type $ next tick, open bracket, pointer function pointed to this one, same one, conversation element. So let's update the scroll top to the height, this height. All right, now this is working fine on initialization. So if we go right now, okay, now as you can see, if I scroll to the top and then I refresh the page, this should scroll automatically to the bottom. Excellent. Now you can see, now when we open a new chat, the conversation is now scrolling to the bottom automatically. So now, what about if we send a message? Here, let's create a listener. Here we can just do something like add scroll bottom window. Here, basically I'm going to do the same thing here. So let's just do this one. Copy this whole element, add a semicolon there, paste it in here, add a semicolon there. So this is just going to, this is a custom event. So let's go ahead and create this event in our chat box. So here, go to the chat box. Here, after the message is reset, but before it is pushed, we want to push the conversation to the bottom. So here I'm going to add this dispatch browser event, the one we created, scroll bottom. Alright, now if we refresh the page, right now let me just try to scroll to the top. Right now let me send a message saying hi. Voila, now you can see the message is being shown down here. I can send a new message, send it, and we are being scrolled automatically. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. So far everything is working fine, and in this video I decided that let's work on these avatars, these ones here. And for this whole time we've just been working on one side of the chat, so it's time to look at how things look from the other side. So if you're logged in with a user, here if you're showing the email as we did before, just copy the email from the top. And here we're going to open, you can open a new browser if you have Safari or Firefox, but I'm just going to open incognito. You can do that too. So here at the top, I'll copy and open incognito. I'll go to the login. There, the email, password as password, login. So now if I go, let me go to the chat. Alright, so this user has two chats, and let me log into this one called Virginia something. So like this is how messages are looking from the other side. If I'm the one who's receiving the message, it's like a different color. And if I'm the one sending, it's like blue, like that. So here on the other side, let me just try to send a message from this chat. Alright, you can see it's appearing like that, which is good. Send another message, another message. At this point, messages are not in real time, but we're going to work on that later. For now, let me just refresh this chat. You can see messages are appearing like that. So the purpose of this video is for us to work on these avatars, because we don't want to show the avatar for each message. So we can just go back to our code, close that. In here we can open the chat box. Yes, here where we loop the messages. Right here, after the messages are loaded, we can just create a new variable, because we want to keep track of the previous message. We're going to do a little bit of logic here, so just follow me on this. Here, let's do at PHP. Here, let's add a variable called previous message is equals to null. All right, so make sure this is outside the for each loop, and then inside the for each loop in here, we're going to keep track of the previous message. All right, in here, we're going to check if the key is greater than 0. In here, we're going to have to do at PHP again. Now let's get the previous message. This one is equals to, here let's get these loaded messages, and then we're going to get key minus 1. Actually, let's also create the key variable here. Don't forget to do that. Here, do as key pointed to the message. So what this does, like for the current message, we're going to get the previous message being looped, so we can put it in the previous message. That's just what this does. Right, now after creating that, you're going to go to the avatar right here. We are going to add a few more classes. Here you can just, let me just zoom in to make it easier. Collapse that. So invisible when the previous message, the sender ID is equals to the message sender ID. Sender ID. Here just put a question mark there. Actually here it's supposed to be sender, put a hyphen, not a pointer there. Yes, now if we go back and then refresh, voila, right here, like let's go to the other chat where we have made long message. As we can see, if the next message belongs to the same user of the message, then it's not going to show the avatar, making it more dynamic and more user friendly like that. This is what we're trying to achieve. So that's it. And then one last thing here, let's hide the avatar from the right side of the chat, and we can leave the one for the other user just like that. Okay, let's go here, add a comma there. Let's add a hidden if the message is sender ID is equals to auth ID. We have the avatar here, and then if I own the message, it's gonna hide the avatar. If I let me send another message here, send it. You see it's still hiding the avatar, and now it's looking much more user friendly. Here, let me send another message on this chat. Voila, now you can see we have a beautiful flow of a chat like that with just one avatar showing per message. So this is that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Alright, right now, if you can see, like in the conversation list, we want to make sure that the conversation with the latest message is at the top. So we want to sort by latest, update that. So we're gonna go back to our chat box. In here, let's go right there. Inside here, after pushing the message, here we're gonna update the conversation model. Right here, let's get this selected conversation, update that. We're gonna make it to now, like this instance, so we can set it to the current time, and then we're gonna save it. Save. We have now added this new line of code. Let's now send a message to, let's open a new chat which has no message, like okay, this one for example, and then I send a message in here. Okay, now let's refresh the page. Alright, now you can see it's now appearing at the top, which is what we wanted. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Alrighty. So far, when we send the message, we are currently updating our chat box correctly, like on our side, but we are not really updating the chat list on the left side here. So right here, let's just emit an event after sending the message so that we can update our chat list of the new changes. So here, after updating the conversation model, down here, we're gonna create a new line of code, refresh chat list. So in here, we're gonna do this. Let me just zoom in, emit to, and about this, there was a GitHub Livewire discussion about this emit to. So if you're in version 3 right now, there might be a change. I don't know what change will be because nothing is certain at this point. This might be something like dispatch to, but you know, like I said, nothing is like for sure at this point. So since right now I'm working on Livewire version 2, I'm just gonna use emit to. In here, chat list. For the event, let's call it refresh. Alright, so that's it for this video. Yes, we're gonna work on the chat list later. For now, let's just keep everything in the chat box. So see you in the next video. So far, all the messages that we are sending are unread so far. Like nothing is changing on this read or unread status. So in this video, when we load the chat, as in the whole page, we are going to mark messages as read. Okay, so to do that, we are going to go back to our code. In here, we can go to our chat right here. We want to update it in here. We're just going to do a few line of code in here. Right here, let's call the message model where the conversation ID is this selected conversation ID. Here I'll do where receiver ID auth ID. Here again, do a where. For efficiency, we want to limit what we do, because if we have like 1,000 messages, we don't want to update all of them. We just want to update the ones which we are supposed to update. So here type where now red at next. Actually, we're now going to update the red at to now. Okay, here it should point, not a comma. So here if I go back, if you can see right now, it's saying that message is not read. Now let's go back to the other user. In here, let me just refresh this model. You can see I've refreshed. Now I go back and then I refresh again here. You can see that now all the messages have now been marked as read, which is good. So I want to update that. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. In this video, we're now going to listen to the emitted event when our message was sent. So real quick, let's go back to our code. In here, let's open the chat list, the component. Let's create a protected listeners. Here, refresh, point to, let me zoom in, add a $sign, refresh. This is just a default listener which is going to refresh the component like that, so that after we send a message from here, so we're going to emit this event and then listen for it in our chat list like that. Now after we do that, let's also go back to our chat list blade. In here, as you can see right now, our messages are not really dynamic because we haven't really put that. So in here, remove this lorem. In here, let's just add the body. So in here, we can get the conversation messages. We want the last and the body of this last one. And if it does not exist, you can just do loop nothing. This is an inline if statement. Here just add a question mark and a question mark. So right now, let's go back to our code, refresh the page. Nice. Now you can see we're actually getting the messages that we sent recently here. If I send a new message saying hello, we send this. You see it's updating the chat list dynamically like that. Here another message. If I click enter, you see the message is being updated here on the left side. So now we've achieved the purpose of this video. So I'll see you in the next one. Alright, now in this video, if you can see right here, we have this 555, the unread messages count. So far, it's not really dynamic, it's still static. So let's make this dynamic. In here, first of all, we're going to open our conversation model. There. In here, we're going to create a new method, a helper method. Here, unread messages count. Here, the return type, we'll make it an int. We can just make this a public function like that. Inside here, return unread messages is equals to, you get the message model. Here where conversation ID here is equals to this ID. And then here also outside this, we're going to type where the receiver ID is equals to the auth user ID. Also here, I'm going to add one last where now the read at, because when I get the ones which we have not read, here get the count. So that's it. So after creating this method, let's copy it. Then let's go back to our chat list. In here where there's unread count, we're first going to check if the conversation unread count is greater than 0. We can just cut this line, paste it inside the if, and then we're going to now show the unread count. So just copy this. Here remove the 5 and then paste it in there. Now if there's no error, let's just check to see if it's working fine. If we refresh, as you can see, since I've been sending messages to these users, which means like there's no unread messages for me. So let me just send a message to this user. Alright, now let me just go to this chat where I've sent a message. In here, I'm going to click on a different chat. Alright, now you see we have 2 unread messages here, so it's now showing and working as we intended it to, like that. And now, if I click on the chat, I open it, you see that the unread message count is gone because now I've read the message, I've opened the chat. And then if I go back to this other user, here as you can see we have unread messages, 2 of them, because we have not yet refreshed the page. Now if I refresh the page, you see that we have gotten the updated status, which is red status here. Yes, this is good. We have now achieved the purpose of this video, so I'll see you in the next one. In this video, we're going to work on these right here, the message read status in the chat list. We want to hide this if the message does not belong to us. Well, we only want to show if this message right here belongs to us and if it is read or not. So let's go work on that logic. In here, we're first going to create a method in the conversation model. So open that, just right above this unread count. Let's create a method. Okay, the return type is going to be an int, a bool. Here, create as a public function. Here, let's first get the user. Here, auth user. Down here, let's get the last message is equals to this messages latest first. Right here, we're going to check if it exists, last message, and then we're going to return the last message if the read at is not equals to now, and if the last message, the sender ID is equals to this user ID. So yeah, that's it for this one. And as you can see here, I use different kinds of method of retrieving the messages. You can use the relationship, or you can just use the model direct. So after creating this one, we can just copy this name. We can go back to our chat list. In here where there's ticks, above there, I'm going to create an if statement. Here, if the conversation, just zoom that, you can get the messages, last message, the sender ID is equals to auth ID. Then inside here, I'm going to create, actually, this is not supposed to be an if else. We can just remove this else. Inside here, I'm going to create another function saying if else now. So I'm going to check if the conversation method we just created, if it is true, then now we're going to show the double tick. So copy that, put it inside here. And then here in the else, let's just uncomment this and then copy it, put it here. All right, the first one is going to be an if. Inside the if, we're going to do an if else. So just follow that carefully. All right, now before we go here, make sure it's this is an actual relationship. So make sure it's messages, and then here, make sure you do that. All right, now let's go ahead and check how things are looking. Okay, this is good. So if you ever face this error again, like in the future, here let's just make this nullable. Here where there's last, put a question mark. In here, put a question mark too, just in case there are no messages, so we can avoid this null error. So just go back, then refresh. Amazing. So now here on the left side, message is unread. This one. On this one, message is read. So now if I send a new message, see what will happen here. Just keep your eyes here on the left. Here, hello, I'm gonna say unread. This one. If I say hi, it's still unread. But if I go to the chat in here and I refresh this chat, you see I get the message, it's sent to me, and here it's not showing the ticks just like we wanted. And now I've read the messages, so let me go ahead and check what's going to happen here. If I refresh here, you see that now we have 2 ticks, which is good. So that's it for this video. I think it's now time we go ahead and start paginating our messages. So let's go to the next video. Alrighty, so at this point we can pretty much update our chat list if we send a new message like that. But right now we have to work on the chat box because we are loading all the messages the first time we open our conversation. We don't want that. If we have 1,000 messages, it's gonna cause our application to be pretty slow. So let's work on improving that. Let's go back, go to the chat box. In here, I'm gonna add one property. Let's call this one paginate variable. We can make it default 10. Right here in the loaded messages method, we're going to create something. First, we're going to get the count. Let's just copy this just once because we're going to use it again. In here, let's call this one count. Right there, do count, of course, because we want to get the latest messages. That's in case the other user also sends a message at the same time we are also sending our message. So we want to get the latest count. Down here, we're going to skip and query. Right here, instead of doing get, we're going to just collapse that. In here, I'm going to say skip count minus this paginate variable on top right there. And we're going to take paginate variable. Okay, so what this does is only going to skip the messages that we have already loaded, and it's going to get those that we want. We're going to increment this variable right here. So here, let's just do a return this loaded messages. All right, here on top, we have to create a method to load more, make it a public, increment the paginate. Here, this paginate variable, make it plus equals to 10, right? Here, we're just gonna increment this by 10. Down there, we're going to call load messages method. This one. All right, that's it. Now, if we go and refresh our chat, we'll see that we're only getting about 10 messages in the chat right here. All right, that's good. Now we have to create a function to call the load more messages. Here, let's create one thing on top here, protected listeners. Let's call this one load more, just the same name as this one. Right now, let's go back to our chat box. Here in the main, here let's just collapse this. Here let's create a scroll. I'm gonna use Alpine to detect the scroll for this element. When we scroll, here we're going to scroll top. Let me just zoom in. Let's create a scroll top. In here, we're gonna use the L. The L is just used to get the current element. Here, scroll top. This is gonna get us the scroll position. Here, if scroll top is less than or equals to 0, then we're gonna do window dot livewire dot emit load more. Fine, simple as that. Now if there's no error, we can go ahead and verify, check, and FYI, the top of the div is 0 scroll top, the bottom is the maximum number. Actually, for testing, before you go and check, just to see everything visually, let me go to the chat box. Here in the load more, before we do this, let's just dd, here let's say detected, just to see if it's going to call the function. Here, let's just refresh. Alright, so now please keep your eyes on the right as I scroll to the top. Here, if I scroll, you see, detected. So I hit the 0. If I scroll again, detected. So this is going to be called every time I hit the top of the div, like that. So now, let me just go ahead and remove this, and then I try again. Now it should load more messages. So let me hit the top. You see, more messages have appeared. Now we have more. If I go again, hit the top, you see, more messages are now appearing as we scroll to the top. So this is good. All right, so now let's work on, because now if you see when I scroll, it's just throwing our chat to a different, messages. Like, we have to maintain the scroll position of our chat box. So we have to work on that. So I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we're going to work on maintaining our scroll position as we load more messages to avoid being displaced in our chat. So let's go ahead and work on that. Here, let's just delete that detected. After the messages are loaded, here we're gonna update the chat height. All right, and if you remember, we created a height in the chat box right here, this one. I mentioned that we're gonna use it again later, so this is the time now. So right here, we're just going to emit or dispatch an event. This dispatch browser event. All right, let's call this one update chat height. And if you're working in Livewire version 3, make sure you check the latest documents of Livewire version 3. Currently, we're on Livewire version 2. The dispatch browser event, we're gonna copy this one. In here, I'm gonna go to a chat box. In there, just in the main. Now we can put it anywhere, but in the main, that's where, let's just put it there. Create at. Now this is Alpine. It just makes it easy for us to detect browser events. Here, let's call this one window. In here, let me just zoom in. It's equals to, in here, first of all, we're going to place the scroll height of this window into the new height. So let's create new height is equals to L, short for element, scroll height. After putting the height in the new height, down there we're going to say old height is equals to the height. Right now, this height, it is coming from here. The first height, when we first load our chat box, we're gonna get the scroll height, the one which is already loaded, so that's where it's coming from. So after getting the old height, down there, L.scrollTop is equals to new height minus old height. So after doing that, we're now going to update our height with the new height so that we can repeat the cycle. So every time we load more messages, we're going to call this one, and it's going to repeat the process, get the height, get the old height, subtract the old height from the new height, and then update the height with the new height. So it's just going to repeat this cycle all the time. Okay, right here, I overlooked this. Just make sure that it's scroll top with a capital T, like that. All right, so now if we go back and refresh, right now, please watch carefully on the right as I hit the top. Awesome, you see, we have loaded more messages and our scroll position has been maintained. Watch this again as I scroll. You see, Amazing. So we have finally achieved our objective of maintaining our scroll position as we load more messages. So that is amazing. Finally, our chat is now dynamic and more user-friendly, as it's not going to make our page slow. So that's it for this video. I will see you in the next one. Alright, in this video we're going to start working with broadcasting. So real quick, let's go to our Laravel website. Here I'm in the Laravel website. Right here, we can just click on the search. So we can search for broadcasting. Let's go there. Right here, we can just go to the server-side installation here. Now in here, we're going to use this composer command. So we're going to copy this command. And then let's go back to our code. In here, I closed all the files. We can open the terminal. Alright, let's paste this command there and install our pusher server. Alright, after that is done, we can go back to our website. Now in here it says you have to configure pusher with the credentials in the broadcasting, but we're going to do this in the env file. And as you can see right now, we don't have this yet. So for now, let's skip this part. Let's go down here. Here we have to go to the env and change the broadcasting driver to pusher. Okay, so now let's go back and open the env file. Right here where it says broadcast driver, we have to change this to pusher. Alrighty, now we can go back. The next step, we have to scroll down and then go to the client side installation and pusher channels. Now we have to install Laravel Echo. Now this is just going to help us subscribe and listen to the broadcasted events from our users, application. Now you have to use this command, npm install Laravel Echo with pusher.js. Now let's go back. For now we can close the env. Down here, paste the command, click enter. Alright, now this has installed pusher and Laravel Echo. So after Laravel Echo is installed, we have to now configure it in the bootstrap.js. So here, type bootstrap.js in the resources. In here, you can see Laravel already comes with this line of code already added in our file. So we can just uncomment this from here until there. That's uncomment. To uncomment, you can click Command KU or Control KU on Windows, I think. Okay, so right now we have to go to a configuration file. So here, just type app, this one, app.php in the config folder. And then let's scroll down. You see this line which is commented out, the broadcasting service provider. We can just uncomment this like that. And then now, so at this point, all the installation of pusher should be okay. Now we have to actually open a pusher account and get our credentials that we're going to put in our env. So let's go back to the browser. And here, let's go to the pusher website. Right, in here we have to create an account. You can just click sign up if you don't already have an account. If you do, just click sign in. And so in here we can go to manage. Alright, let's go to the channels. In here we can create an app, a new app. We can call this one Livewire real-time chat application. In here you can select the cluster. You can choose which location you are based in, which is closer to you rather. So I'll choose the EU and then create apps for multiple environments. But since we're only going to do development for now, we're not going to create this. Here you can choose backend for Laravel, but it doesn't really matter, like that. And then create app. Right now we have these files, but as you can see, we've already installed this, and now we have to copy these app keys. But this is not the only way of finding the app keys. Let me show you another way of getting them. In here, you can, on the left side, you can click on the app keys. And now we need these app keys because we're going to use them to connect our application with pusher. So let's go back to our code. In here, let's open the env again. In the env, scroll down, go to where there's pusher ID here, pusher app key, here pusher secret, and the ID. So now let's copy the app ID, paste it in the app ID here. Now we need the key, paste the key in here. Let's get the secret and let's paste it there. Then we need the cluster too, it's very important. Copy the cluster, put it there. Right, so now these are the keys that you need for connecting your application with it. It can be Laravel, it can be a mobile application, but if you want a new key, you can just click there. This is gonna create a new key, and you can delete the other one if you think it's like it has been compromised. But if you wanna like change or create new keys for a different application, you can just click here and generate new keys. Right, so now we should go back to our application. Let's close the env. In here we have to restart this npm run dev. So you just click Ctrl+C there and then run this command again so it can install Laravel Echo to our front end compiled files. Alright, now we have to test if Pusher is actually installed. How we're gonna do that? The easiest way right now is for us to go to the debug console. Well, in here you can see it's going to waiting for new events. So now let's go back to our website. In here we can just refresh this. If everything is installed correctly, we should see an event fired here. Awesome. So you see now, like the connection is origin HTTP, the local host. So if you want to make sure that it's installed correctly, just go ahead and refresh your website. And it should fire a new event there. So that's it. We have now successfully installed Pusher in our application. And now in the next video, we're now going to start to create some notifications. So see you in the next video. Alrighty. In this video, we are now going to start working with our notifications. So when we send a message, like for example here, we want to be able to deliver the message to the other user in real time without having to do any kind of refresh like polling. So we're not going to work with that. So this time, let's now go ahead and create our first notification. Let's go back to our code. In here, we can just close all this. We don't need it anymore. Open up the terminal. In here, we can start by creating our first notification. So here, type php artisan make notification. Here, we want the message with a capital M and a capital S, message sent. Click enter. Now this will create the notification in this folder. So here, open up the file explorer. We collapse everything. Here in the app, notifications, this one. So we have our notification set up. Now in here, we need the data for construct here. So let's create some public properties that are going to pass to this notification. Here, public user, we can copy this 3 more times. In here, we can create message, the conversation, of course, and the receiver, here ID. And then in here, we have to pass this properties, user, copy that a few more times. Here, message, conversation, receiver ID. Well, now let's add these again. In here, let's add this, user is equals to user. Okay, again, let's copy this, paste this a few more times. Here, message, conversation, receiver ID. All right, now that is done, in here we have to, in here it's asking how we're gonna deliver this notification. So I'm gonna use broadcasting. So here just type broadcast. In here we're gonna add another function. Now this is going to be a default method. So we can go to our Laravel website for this. So you can actually see what's going on. Here let's go to our top so we can search for notifications. This one. Here in the notifications, we can go to broadcast notifications right here. Okay, right here, we're going to copy this method because the one we're going to use now. Copy that, paste it in here. We're going to use this to deliver our values to the other user. So here, you can just change these variables to user ID. Here you can get the user that we just declared earlier. Here, conversation ID. Here, conversation ID. You can just copy this. Here, type message ID. Here, message ID. Here, receiver ID. Here, we can just do the receiver ID that we just added. Right, so now that is added, we now have to create a channel where our broadcast notifications are going to be authenticated or verified. Now we can go here. If you see down here, we're gonna use notifications. So in here, you can see this is the users. We have to add this to the users model. This is gonna customize the channel. So here, copy this, go back to the app. In here, before you go back to the app, we have to add one more thing. Here we have to implement should broadcast now. Make sure it should broadcast now. All right. We're gonna change that later, but for now, just go to the user model. In here, after the conversations, we can just paste this one. So after customizing the channel, one last step. In here, we can go to the routes and channels. Right here, we're gonna create a custom channel. We can just copy this. Here we can type users dot ID. It should match this one that we just customized in the user model here. Users and user ID, like that. Okay, after creating this custom channel, we're now going to broadcast our first notification. Here we have to open the chat box. In here, in the send message method, after the message is sent, here we have to broadcast notification. Here, let's get this selected conversation. In here, we're gonna get receiver. Let me collapse this. Here, we're gonna use the notify new message sent notification. This one. Inside here, you can see it's expecting 1, 2, 3, 4 parameters. The first is gonna be the auth user. Here, created message. Next, gonna be the conversation. So I'm gonna get this selected conversation. And the next one, selected conversation. Here, let's say get receiver ID. So now if you go back, let's just refresh this. Here in the debug console, we're gonna see if the message is delivered correctly. We're gonna see the event being fired here. So let's just clear this. Make sure you go to the debug console in the pusher right here. So here, let me try to send a new message. Okay, message is sent. Now let's go and check our debug console, and voila, you can see we now have the message sent with this event. Now if you open this, if you click on this, you can see that we now deliver the user ID, the conversation ID, the message ID, and the receiver ID. So that's it for this video. See you in the next video. We're gonna work on receiving our message in our application right here. So for example, if I send a new message like that, you see the message is sent quite right, and if you go to pusher, here it is, the new message. But if we go to the other user here, the message is not delivered in real time. So in this video, we're going to now achieve that finally. So to do that, we can go to right here at the top. We're going to create a new listener. Now this is a courtesy of Caleb. He made it very easy for us to listen for notifications and broadcasted events in our Livewire component. So we're going to change this protected listeners. We're going to make it public function in here. Let's say get listeners. Now, mind you, this is not a custom method. It's a default method, as you can see here. So you have to type it exactly as it is here, get listeners. Here, just remove this return type. Inside here, let's add auth. Here, ID is equals to auth user ID. Here, add a semicolon there. And then down here, we're going to say return an array of listeners. Here, put a question mark. All right, so here, we're going to get this one, the load more. We're going to put it in here, comma. Then now, we're going to say echo. Here, put this double quotes. Echo. Here, it's going to be private channel and users dot, and here you can just say curly brackets in order for us to add this auth ID. Right, after these curly brackets, we're going to add a question mark and a dot. Now we're going to pass this the event that is being broadcasted, because we're going to listen to an event here. And if you go to the debug console, in here you can see the channel is private users, of course, and the event is now this one here, is this one. This illuminate notification broadcasted. So we're going to copy this event. Copy that. And then in here, we're going to paste it there. And just close that. But in here, as you can see, we have to escape this backslash. So let's just add double backslashes or all the backslashes. All right. Now after doing that, we're now going to point this to some quotes. Here we can say broadcasted notifications. All right, that's it. Now let's go ahead and create this method down here. So here, function, broadcasted notifications, return type, let's not add anything. You call this one public function. In here, this is going to receive an event. So here, event, and to see this in real time just for testing, we can do dd the event. So now if there's no error, of course, we can just go ahead and test it. So in here, I refresh the other browser and make sure you're logged in with the user you're chatting with for this to work. So just if you haven't done that already, make sure you go here, copy the email, and then log in incognito or another browser. For me, I've already done that. So here I'm go back and refresh. I'm gonna send a new message. Sent it. And now if I go to the other browser, it should work. You see? Awesome. We're now able to deliver our notification to the other user without having to refresh the page. Cancel that. And then in here, let me go back. So let's just test this again. Let me do that. Let me type hello there. I click enter. You see, instantly the message is received on the other end of the user. All right, now since we are already receiving this message, it's now time we actually push the message into our chat box. So let's go ahead and push the message. So let's go back to our code. In here, in the broadcasted notifications, let's just remove this event. If event, here the type is equals to the message sent class, like that. Because we can have many kinds of notifications. So I'm gonna check if this notification is of the message sent notification. So down here, we're also gonna check now if event conversation ID, you make sure it's event conversation ID is equals to this selected conversation ID. Now the reason why we're doing this, the second if, is because we do not want to deliver the wrong message to the wrong chat. So just specifying if this chat ID is equals to the chat ID that is delivered in the broadcast. So after that, we're gonna first do one thing, dispatch browser event, scroll bottom. Then after dispatching the scroll bottom, we're now going to get the message. So here is going to be new message is equals to message model find. In here we can just do event again, message ID. After that, we're now going to message. So here we can do this loaded messages, push the new message. Awesome. I think if that's fine, then this should work fine. And here, let's make sure that this is message sent. Okay. As you can see, he actually called the wrong model, so it's good I saw it fast. In here, check message sent. This one. Like always, check here to make sure that you know what you're calling message sent. All right, now this should work fine if there's no error. So let's go back and let's just refresh this. We go back to the other browser. Also here, refresh. Now watch as I send a message from this other browser. Hello. You see? Awesome. Amazing. Now the message is being delivered to the other user instantly without us having to refresh the page in any way. So that's good. Let me send another message saying, how are you? You see, instantly. Awesome. So now let me just show you one more thing here. Just watch as I send a message. Here, when I click enter, you notice a slight delay. When I send this message, you notice a slight delay like that. This is because we are not using backend queues. So in the next video, I'm gonna try to implement that so we can make the response time faster for the browser. So see you in the next video. In this video, we're now going to use our background queues for us to process our messages so that we can improve the response time in the front end. So you can just go to the Laravel website. In here, you can go to the top. Here, search for queues. Right here, go to driver nodes, and here copy this command, open up the terminal, you can paste this. Now this is going to create our jobs migration. Now we actually have to run this migration. PHP artisan migrate. Awesome. Now this has now created the jobs table. And now the next thing we have to do, we have to go back to the website. Right here, you can see we should not forget to change this in the queue migration to database in the env file. So here we can go back, open the env, and you can go to where there's queue, here, queue connection. Instead of sync, put database, because if it's sync, then I'm going to have to use should broadcast now. But since we don't want to broadcast instantly when we send our message, we're going to use database. Now let me close that. You can also close the env. After doing that, here in the message sent notification, we have to go there. In here we should change this from now to just should broadcast, this one. So click there so it can be injected here, and you can remove this should broadcast now. Right now, if we go back, let's go to our user here. You see that new message is now changed. It's now become faster here. As you can, if you have noticed, you can try it on your browser, but here on my browser, it has now become fast like before. Like there's no delay. So right now, if we go to the database, right here, you can see we have a jobs table created. And now if you go, you see the jobs are being created here, but they're not yet processed, because now if I open this user and this other one, and then if I send a message here, for example, hello, you see message is not delivered to this other user. Why? Because the jobs are not processed yet. So we have to process them by running the queue worker. So now to do that, we have to go back to our code. In here, we have to run this command, php artisan queue work, and enter. Now you see, this is now going to process these queues, the jobs in the database. And if you go, you see that the message is now delivered here automatically. So that's how the queues work. So now if you go to a database, you see that if I refresh this, it's now gone, which means the jobs have now processed successfully. Let me send another message saying hello again. You see, message is now delivered to the other user without us having to go and refresh the page. So now that's working fine. If you can go, every message we send is gonna run a queue here. It's gonna process the message in the background, and then with this now we don't have to wait for the message to be broadcasted as we send our message in our browser. So that's it. See you in the next video. We're going to create our message read notification. But before we do that, let's first fix a few bugs that I noticed. So real quick, let's go back to our code. In the chat box blade, right here at the top where it's height, simply remove that. Copy this height, conversation element, scroll height, replace it with that. Don't add a semicolon there. Okay, don't add this. If you have a semicolon, remove it, otherwise it's gonna cause a bug. Right, again, down here, go to where we are looping inside the for each loop, go to the element. In here, let's add a wire key. You can make this time dot key. All right, so after doing that, next, if you can open up the terminal. In here, since now we are working with queues, every time we use our application, we have to run one command. We have to run a third command called php artisan queue work. Now this is going to make it possible to process the jobs. Otherwise, if you don't run this command, your jobs are not going to be processed. Alright, so after doing that, let's now go ahead and create our message read. So here, php artisan make notification message read. Awesome. Here, if you can go to the notification, collapse this. Here up, notifications, message read is created. In here, we're gonna, at the top, let's add implements, should broadcast. Here, let's add a public property, conversation ID, copy that, add it there, also add it there. Here, let's add broadcast. All right, so this is done. Now we can close this. In the chat box, let's open the chat box component, this one. In here, you have to go to the broadcast notifications here, event. In here, make sure this is at the top before the message is created. All right, next, after pushing the message, we now have to mark this message as read. Here, new message. Here, we're going to update the red hat field is equals to now. Here, new message, let's save it. So after the message is saved, we now have to inform the other user saying, okay, your message has now been read. Here, broadcast. Now to broadcast this, we're going to use this same command we used here. This notification, just copy this. And here we're going to use this, but we're going to remove this whole event. Here, let's say after new, type message read. You're not going to receive only one parameter, which is this selected conversation ID. Remove the semicolon there. All right, now, so this is gonna, after the user has received the message, this is gonna be sent back to the user as a feedback to inform the other user that the message has been read. Okay, now how are we gonna know that the feedback has been received? So now we're gonna go to our chat box. In here, inside the init function, here let's do echo dot private. We're not gonna use the channel users dot auth user ID. Okay, just collapse down here, add dot notification. We can pass the notification here, point it to. All right, in here we're gonna check if we have to now do a check, a verification. If notification, let me just zoom in. If this type is equals to, here type up notifications. So here make sure it's double backslash, also here double backslash. Here message read. Then let's just for checking, let's do alert message read. So we have to get a feedback bouncing back to the user if this message has indeed been read. All right, now before you continue, here in the code, make sure that you put all this from here to there, put them in brackets. Don't forget that. All right, here add a semicolon because this is going to be a pointer function. Sorry for that, I overlooked it. But just make sure you put them inside like brackets. All right, now if we go back and refresh the page, right here, make sure that with this user, you are logged in the other browser, incognito or something. So here, I'm already logged in. I'm going to refresh the page here. So now if we send a message, you are supposed to get a feedback to us saying our message has been read, if everything is working correctly. Hello. Awesome. You see, on top here, we received notification, our message has been read on top here, as you can see, just as we wrote here. So excellent. At this point, everything is working fine, but here we also have to check one more thing. Here, copy this, and then here add and here notification. Here change it to conversation ID is equals to here this selected conversation ID. This, it will just help us to check that if this conversation, the one for the message being read, is equals to the one that we're actually broadcasting. Right, so for this, we have to make sure that it is passed to the other user. But if we go to the message read notification, all right, in here, let's also broadcast this message along. So in here, just as we did in the message sent, go to the message sent. In here, you can copy this function, this method, go back to the message read, just after the broadcast here, paste it. We can just remove this and that so that we can have this conversation ID here, replace it with this conversation, this one. Just inject that. Right, fine. Now if we go back to here, everything is fine. If we go back here, refresh the page here, if I do hello, awesome, you see the message is read with a verification to show that conversation actually belongs to us. So this is it for this video. See you in the next one. In this video we're going to actually mark the message as read or not here in our front end when we send our message. So here, let's go back. Here we're going to create a new Alpine property. Here add a comma. Here let's add another one, mark as read. Here let's make it null. This, after we receive this message read broadcasting, here we're going to set this, remove that, mark as read to true. Copy that. Alright, down here in our, let's go down all the way to this double ticks and single ticks. In here, let's add X data. Here, mark as read. Here, since we are looping this message, this is inside the loop, we can get this message and then pass the status of its original mark or read status. So in here, we can do something like add JSON. This is a blade component that we can use to pass data correctly from our PHP to our blade. Here, you can do message is read. Now this is just going to print out the true or false for this current message being looped. Right after that, in here we don't really need this anymore. This if, else, and if. So we can remove that, and remove this is read because we're going to use Alpine now. Here we have these two elements. In here you can add X clock to hide it before the browser is loaded. We don't want this flickering. Here add X show. Here mark as read if it's true, we're gonna show it, and then copy this X show again, come to this element down. Here we're just gonna add an exclamation mark in front of this one. Alright, so now this will put the read or not read status when we load the page, and then when we receive a new message, this on top is a global. It's going to update all the markers read inside this file to true. That's what this does simply. Right, so now let's test it out. Let me refresh the page there, also there. So now watch on the right, please, like as I send a new message. So here, let me send a message. You see right now it's not read, but in a few seconds we should get, voila, you see? Now it's marked as read after the feedback is received. Here, show you once more, enter, watch here. You see? Now it's working fine. Alright, so I think that's it for this video. See you in the next one. Alright, in this video we're going to work on our chat list. Here, if you can see, if I send a message saying hello, you see here the read status is marked as read, but here on the left side it's not, nothing is changing, like it's not marking as read or not. So we're gonna work on that in this video. So let's go back. In here, if you see this private echo, we can just copy all of it. Go to, let's open our chat list, the blade file, go to the top. Inside the init here, down below, we can paste that. Let's remove the last if there. Right, so here it's going to be message read. Here you can copy that, or message sent. In here we just want to do one command. Here it's going to be window livewire.emit refresh. This is just going to refresh the component by calling the refresh in the backend here, chat list. by calling this one. So now, after doing that, we can now go, okay, after refreshing the page. So now let's see if it's going to be updated here on the left as we send a new message. Here, hello. Again, let's watch here. Awesome. You see, now our chat list has been updated in real time after the message has been read. So I think that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. We're going to start this video by first refreshing the whole database. So in the terminal here, let's open a new one. And here let's type php artisan migrate fresh seed. All right. Awesome. Now we have a fresh new database. Next, we're going to have to run our queues. And remember, if you're going to use our queues from this point onwards, we have to start the queue worker. Your php artisan queue work. All right, now this is going to listen to the jobs and then it's going to run them when you send our messages. Right, next, we're going to have to go in here. Let's create two new users. I open two browser, Incognito and Chrome. Right, so after doing that, let's go to our chat list and create our first method for deleting. Let's open the chat list, the blade. In here, go to the drop down. We haven't touched this, but now let's go to our drop down. Here in the delete button, here we can just add a few attributes. On click, we're gonna first confirm if the user actually wants to delete it or not. Here, confirm, we're gonna say, are you sure? The question mark. Here let's add or event dot stop immediate propagation. This is just going to ask, it's just gonna display a model for us to click cancel or continue. And here I'm gonna add a wire click there. We're gonna create this method delete by user. All right, in here we're going to pass a parameter here, add single quotes. We're going to first encrypt this ID before we send it. So here do encrypt, here the conversation ID. This is to prevent users from changing this ID and deleting other users' conversations by mistake. Okay, so now let's go to our chat list in the backend. In here we have to create the deleted by user method. Make it a public. Here let's get the ID. Let me just show you how the ID looks like when encrypted and decrypted. Here dd pass ID and decrypt ID, so you can see the difference. All right, and here make sure it's delete by ID. All right, now let's go ahead and check. Here refresh the page. Now if I click on delete, it's going to ask me, are you sure? I'll say yes. You see, here is the encrypted ID and the decrypted. So if you are gonna pass data from the input or something from the by user click, always protect the data. You know, it's very important. Okay, so now let's go ahead and actually start deleting our conversation. So let's go back. In here we can remove this. Here let's get the user ID. Let's auth ID. Right, now let's get the conversation. Here we can get the conversation model, find. Now we can decrypt the ID. All right, next down here, let's get the conversation messages. Let's do each. We want to loop through each message so we can perform an action on each message of this conversation. Here, let's do function pass message coming from here. I'm gonna pass it inside here, and I'm gonna use the user ID there. After the use, right here, create some brackets and then close it down there. Right, inside here we're going to perform some actions. Okay, say if the message sender ID is equals to the user ID, then let's do message update sender deleted at, you can say now. Here in the end add a semicolon. Here we can say else if message receiver ID is equals to user ID, And then add some brackets. In here we can say message update. Here you guessed it, receiver deleted that. Now, alright, so here this is just going to set the sender or deleted that to the current time depending on who owns the message. Right, after that, after marking the message as deleted, down here we're going to check if the other user has also deleted the message. Here, receiver also deleted. So here we're going to get the conversation messages down here. Let's say where here function query we're going to use, we're going to pass the user ID. Alright, so after putting the user ID there, before the close tag of this, in here we can just add brackets and then zoom out. Inside here I'm going to use this query to check where sender ID is equals to user ID, down here again, or where receiver ID is equals to user ID. Close that. Alright, here down, but we're going to check for now value. Where function query use user ID. In here, before closing, let's just add like that. Alright, here we're going to get this query, check where now sender deleted that, down here again, or where now. Here make sure that there's you point there, or where now receiver deleted at. Right, after that we're going to check doesn't exist. Add the semicolon there, also here add the semicolon. Okay, so this is just going to check to make sure that all the messages have been deleted, and if that's the case, here if receiver also deleted, then we're actually going to delete the conversation. Here conversation force delete. After that we're going to return redirect route chat.index. Here add a comma. Alright, so here is the flow. We're going to get the conversation and then we're going to mark the conversation as deleted by this user. And then in here we're going to check if the other user has also deleted the messages. If that's the case, down here it's going to actually delete the conversation and then redirect to the chat index. Okay, so now if I try to delete, I think it's going to give an error because here in our messages table there, right, we did not specify what to do when the conversation is deleted. So here let's just add cascade on delete. Here just going to make this nullable, and then here I'm going to say now on delete, so that if the user is deleted, we're just going to set this field as now. Here do the same, nullable, and then here now on delete. Okay, now let's go back to this one. Let's rerun this migrate fresh seed. Alright, so just right here you have to go back and then log in with the two users and open the browser. Okay, so now I've re-logged in with two users after refreshing the database. Before we delete this conversation, for example, here let me just go to the database, let me go to conversations, and here the conversation exists here. So now with this user, let me click and then let me send a message, for example here, hi. You see the message is being received on the other user. Here let me also send another message, hello. In here with this user, now let me go ahead and delete this conversation. Here it's going to say yes, I'm sure. You see the conversation is actually now deleted. If I increase this, if I zoom in this, the conversation is now deleted, but you can see it here, and we're going to work on that later. Now if I go to the database, here the conversation, nothing happens. You see it's already it's still existent, but now if I go to the messages table, you see that here sender deleted that is now filled. for this message, and also here the receiver deleted that is now filled. Alright, this is working fine, but now let's see what happens if I try to also delete the conversation from the other user. This other user in here, let me try to delete the conversation. Click yes. You see that the conversation has now completely been deleted. Nothing is appearing here. And if I go to the database and refresh this, you see all the messages are gone. And then also, if I go to conversations, no conversation is there. So which means our code is now working perfectly. Okay, so now let's go to our next video where we're going to continue this deleting process. Welcome. In this video, we're going to work on filtering our deleted conversation so that if a conversation is deleted, for example, like this, ask me, are you sure? Yes. Right now, I wanna remove the conversation I've deleted from the list to stop showing up from here. So to do that, we're gonna go to our code. In here, we can open the conversation model. This one. Here, right above this is last message read by user. We're gonna create a function, make it a public function. Yes, scope, why not deleted? Inside here, let's get the user ID. Here, let's return. And you're gonna pass a query in here. Right, scopes, they basically help us not to repeat our code. Okay, we can do this in our control, our component if we wanted to, but because we want to avoid writing the same code all over our application, we're just going to write a scope for it. Here, return this query where function, I'm going to pass this query so we can go one level deep. Use user ID. Inside here, create some brackets, and here we can close it there. Here, we're going to get the query again, and here I'm going to do two things. First of all, it's going to be where message is not deleted. Go ahead and write where has messages the relationship, comma. Here, type function query. Here, we're going to use user ID. Inside here, again, let's go another level deep. Here, make sure inside here, now we're actually going to use our query to filter out where function again, query. Here, use user ID. In here, query where sender ID is equals to the user ID. Here, let's do where null sender deleted at. I'll put a semicolon there. And here, we're basically going to repeat this function from here. So here it's going to be or where function query use. Now this just helps us to check each and every message one by one. That's why we're doing this kind of into our query. User ID. After that, and here I just go here. We can now copy this now. After doing that, copy that. Inside here, let's just change this to receiver ID. Here we can say receiver deleted at. There, add a semicolon. Alright, now we also have to do one more query here, because this query, if the conversation has no messages, it's gonna bring now, which means it's gonna not work correctly. So we also have to include those conversations without any messages here, or where doesn't have messages. Alright, make sure you add messages inside there. Now let's go to our user model. The user model in the conversation relationship, here in the end, we have to add this one, where not deleted, add open brackets there. Okay, right now if we go back to our browser, and then here in my conversation, I have many conversations here. So watch this conversation with this name. Let me click on it. So with the name Arnulfo Hettinger, let me try to delete this conversation. So here I click delete. Are you sure? Yes. Okay, awesome. You can see the conversation has now disappeared from our conversation list, which means by default, we're going to filter out the deleted conversations from our chat list. Let me try again this last user, Monroe. Come here. Let me delete. Are you sure? Yes. You can see the Monroe is now gone. If I refresh the page, it's not going to come here. Okay, so that's it for this video. In our next video, we're now going to work on the logic whereby when you delete the conversation, we don't want to delete the conversation from the other user, just on our side. So to do that, I'll see you in the next video. Righty. In this video, we're going to work on filtering the messages that are deleted. If a conversation is deleted, then we don't want to show those messages again. In here, in this browser, I have a conversation with this user logged in this browser. So for example here, if here take note of the name is Whoopi Farrell. Here, if I delete this conversation with Whoopi, yes, I am sure, you see, the conversation is gone here. And then if for some reason in the future I start chatting with Whoopi again, here, let me go to users, right here, and then for some reason I start chatting with Whoopi again. When I click here, you see that the messages that I deleted before are still there. Now we don't want that. We want to have a fresh conversation on our side when we start chatting with the user after we've deleted our conversation with them. So to do that, we're gonna go back to our code. In here, we're gonna go to, let's open our chat box, the component. Let's go to our loaded messages. Actually, let's go to our load messages. In here, we're just gonna add a few lines of code in between here and in between there. So here in top, let's add a user ID. Right, then down here, let's add the where function query. Here we're gonna use the user ID. Inside here, let's type query where sender ID is equals to this user ID right here, and also do a where now sender deleted at, and here make sure here in the beginning add pointed there at the semicolon. Here I want to make sure that this message being looped has not been deleted by the user, which means this field sender deleted at is now. Okay, so after doing that, we're just gonna copy this again so we can repeat the process and just change a few things. Here add or where, and then in here add receiver ID, and also here receiver deleted at. Alright, now we just have to repeat this process down here. So here, just copy this, the where and from where, and paste it in here. Now if you remember, this just gets the count on top here, and then this gets the actual messages. Right now, if I go back to the browser, in here we have these messages, but if I refresh, you should see that the messages are now gone. But if I go to the other user and refresh in here, you see this user still has a copy of the messages. And to show you what's happening, here, let me just type, hello, are you there? If I go, you see, I'm now getting the messages from this user, but it's like a fresh new conversation. And I can also reply saying, yes, I am around. You see, now if I go, messages are now showing up here. So now this is working perfect as we aimed. We can now delete a conversation from one side of the user, and you can try this for many different other kinds of users, but just right now it's going to make sure that we do not compromise the chat of the other user in case we delete our own. And then if we both delete the conversation, it's going to permanently delete all the messages. That's how this works. So yeah, no, I think for now this is it, and I'll see you. Let me try to work on more videos about. See you guys later.